It is, what is the date? It is Monday, April 28th. This is a special meeting of the Town of Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. It is 7:30 PM on the dot. The ZBA will make every reasonable effort to complete this agenda in a timely manner. If you are presenting tonight, I think most of you know the drill. What you have to do is you have to come up and speak into the microphone. Even though the whole group can hear you clearly, what we have to do is get you on record. So you have to speak into the microphone so that we can get you on record, and you can't speak over each other. We just need one at a time. And we're going to try and keep it tight. Mr. Maslin, we're going to try and keep it tight on your presentations. All right. To start off, what we're going to do is start with some postponements and continuations. These are changes to the meeting agenda. So starting with calendar number 6-2025, the application of Patrick Shore, David R. Ginter, PE, and Redness and Mead on behalf of Simon and Stephanie Jones, 30 Plymouth Road. We're going to continue that to April 20.
May 5th.
Sorry.
May 5th.
May 5th.
Next Monday.
Next Monday.
Yeah.
We
Close.
are? That's Cinco de Mayo. All right, we're going to continue that to Cinco de Mayo. Calendar number 8-2025, the application of Steve Dimovsky of Dimovsky Architecture on behalf of Victoria Nozel and Mikhail Geller at 31 Lynn Court. That is also going to be continued until Monday, May 5th. Calendar number 12-2025, the application of Jonathan Racino on behalf of Janet Racino at 80 West Avenue will be continued to Monday, May 5th. And lastly, calendar number 9-2025, the application of Tracy and Mark Fox at 15 Sunset Road will also be postponed to Monday, May 5th. But don't leave yet. We've got 3 hot ones for tonight. Starting with calendar number 4-2025. This was opened on March 24th of 2025 and continued without testimony to tonight. This is the application of Amy Zabatakis on behalf of Carrie and Frank William Perrone regarding the property located at 72 Old Kings Highway South. First up, Ms. Zabatakis, if you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. Amy Zabatakis, Rucci Law Group. I'm here on behalf of Frank and Carrie Perrone, the owners of 80 Old Kings Highway South, which is adjacent to 72 Old Kings Highway South. Ms. Perrone is here with me, along with their friend Reese Hutchinson. So 72 Old Kings Highway South has been a problem for the town for a long time. This is a aerial view from 2024. You can see even in this photo that there's a great deal of rubble, building debris, et cetera, on the site. I think you've got all of the background from the town, but there were a number of cease and desists filed for illegal commercial operations, illegal regrading, all sorts of problems. And you can really see, if you look at, this is the same overhead shot. I borrowed liberally from Google Earth, but this is from 2019. Mm-hmm. And you can see the ledge on the lot, 72 Old Kings Highway South, and see how at that time it was not a flat lot. It was, you know, there was a lot of tree foliage and everything. There was a lot of privacy for 80 Old Kings Highway South. So now we're in 2025. Now there is a large house on the lot, and there is a cement wall right next to my client's house. That is the, I don't know if you can see my cursor, it's pretty small, but this white line here is the cement wall that is the real problem in this case. So how did we get here? Like I said, there were years of violations on this property. And in 2021, the then owner, oops, where did the 2021 site plan go? Oh, here we go, sorry. In 2021, the prior owner filed a landfilling and regrading application to try to correct some of the issues on the property. they had, with all of the regrading that was done, sort of created this large boulder wall on the property. And the plan in 2021 was to build a series of small retaining walls going down to 80 Old Kings Highway South to sort of secure the area where they had already done all the regrading. And it was an attractive plan, and it was going to solve the nonconformities and the work that had been done without a permit. But that work was never completed. There's nothing in the Darien zoning regulations that legalizes illegal regrading. There is, language about if you build a structure and there's no zoning enforcement action. But in this case, there were multiple zoning enforcement actions, and there's nothing in the regulations that would otherwise legalize illegal regrading activities.
So just quickly, did the prior owner do this, the majority of the regrading, as far as you know?
Yes. The regrading that resulted in the boulder wall.
But the boulder wall is being proposed, no?
No.
Or you mean just all the boulders up on top
The
of
boulders
hill?
up higher.
Okay, got it, okay.
If you
Got
look,
it. No, I understand.
okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
the cement wall
Yep.
is the wall that I filed an appeal about.
Got it.
If you look above that, you can see the boulder
Understood.
wall.
Okay.
In 2024, the current owner filed an application for a permit to build the house that we saw that's being built right now. And as part of the foundation permit, there were some questions raised about the stability of this boulder wall. And could it withstand the additional chipping and all that would be required to put a basement in behind it? And the town engineer, peer review, asked some questions about it. And the applicant hired a structural engineer who said, it's fine. The wall is secure. He did say, if you were worried about it, we could put some sort of toe wall in. That was not required by the town peer review engineer. Typically, if there's something that is offered up by an applicant that the town engineer thinks is essential, they say, yes, we want you to take on that activity. The town engineer was not then ever asked to look at the project again, to look at what this new wall would do to the drainage patterns, et cetera, because that was a big part of what he had looked at with the foundation plans. So but for whatever reason, and I don't know who, but staff decided, yes, we want some sort of retaining wall built in front of the boulder wall. And so they asked for a plan to be drawn up by the structural engineer. And it's very light, but this is in the packages that you've received. The structural engineer presented two different proposals of what a wall could look like. There wasn't a single design. There were, like I said, I'm sorry, it's coming up so light on the screen, but there's option 1 and an option 2. There are two different walls. Both involve substantial regrading behind the wall to get it up to the level of the boulder wall. But both do show, this is the black line, a sort of retaining wall that is right adjacent to the boulder wall. So that's what they proposed. Now, there was no public hearing, there was no application that my clients were aware of. They were not given an opportunity to comment on whether or not they thought this wall was necessary, whether they thought this wall was helpful or anything. Because we're already within 15 feet of the property line, and that's important as we discuss, when you need to start thinking about landfilling and regrading permits. So this was what was proposed. So then the wall was built, and a foundation as-built was submitted by the applicant. And I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this a little bit for you. So you can see that the foundation as-built clearly shows, so this sort of bumpy looking thing is the boulder wall I've been referencing that was built by a prior owner. Built being a strong word, sort of created over time. And then you can see between this boulder wall and the property line where there's a wall. Nowhere not adjacent to the boulder wall and extremely close to the property line. If we go back, as I said, if we go back to the option plans, you will see that the idea was then to have fill behind the wall up to the level of this boulder wall, to bring the grade. So again, the whole point of the boulder wall was to make it so that they had this big flat yard, to regrade the entire property.
Did any of those plans show how tall the retaining wall was supposed to be?
Yeah, the options show it to be 5 feet above grade, although it does show regrading behind the wall up to the height of the wall and regrading in front of the wall as well. But the exposed face of the wall was to be 5 feet. So, you know, it was obvious that neither one of these walls is actually what was proposed. And it is, as I said, extremely close and extremely tall to my client's property. And that you can see, again, you can see my client's house. You can't see my cursor, but you can see the edge of their house right there. The pink is a surveyor stake. I'll also note that when the surveyor stake is in one of those low farmer walls, you know, the stacked stone walls that you see all over the place in Connecticut, and that stone wall is the dividing property line between the two properties, and that stone wall is falling over in a number of places because of all of the work that's been done here. This was all trees and landscaped previously. So the as-built survey that I showed you that had the wall, that clearly showed the wall location as within a couple feet of the property line, was approved by the town on January 13th, 2025. And that decision was appealed by me on behalf of my clients on January 23rd, 2025. It's our position that this decision is improper because the retaining wall, including the regrading, requires a special permit. And further, that the wall that was built doesn't even comply with the plans that were submitted. There's been no drainage plan submitted in connection with this wall. There's been nothing reviewed by the town engineer in connection with this wall. And nothing's been done to protect the Perrones. And it's really, you know, I know this is maybe not as relevant from a legal standpoint, but it's really disappointing to me that this is what's happened. They have lived next to a site where unpermitted and illegal activity, including commercial activity, has gone on for years. And at no point has anything been done to protect them. And then now some of the documentation I saw said that this is what is supposed to be protection for them, and it's not.
What was your client told when he purchased this property about the history?
My clients owned this property before all of this started. When did you?
The grandmother owned the front houses in the 50s and divided the property in the 70s.
So, yeah, so
Okay.
it's been
They've
in the
always been
family
there. Got
since
it. Okay.
well before any of these problems started.
Okay.
What is your basis for saying that that retaining wall, or in fact any retaining wall, put aside grading, requires a special permit?
Well, the fact of the matter is that a retaining wall, if it's actually retaining anything, is going to require regrading. That's the whole point. You're building a retaining wall to flatten out the grade. So anytime there's ever a retaining wall on a plan, there's almost always a regrading application, unless you've got a retaining wall that's, you know, within 20 feet of the construction that you're doing. Sometimes you don't have to get a permit, but in this case, whenever you're within 15 feet of the boundary line with regrading, you have to get a special permit.
Agreed on if the regrading is within 15 feet of the property line, and more than, I think it's 20 cubic yards?
20 cubic yards. There's not an and.
20 cubic yards. I disagree, but I'd like to hear why. I mean, I think the statute says, it says basically any regrading within 15 feet, you need a special permit, but then there's an exception for home landscaping projects carried out by or for the owner which require less than 20 cubic yards of excavation. That's section 851. And then when you get down to 854, it says in addition to findings required above, that's really talking about findings in relation to the special permit, you need, if it extends within 15 feet of the boundaries of the premises, unless it can show to have no negative impact. So I just want to understand your view of why less than 20 cubic yards of excavation is not excluded from that 15-foot requirement.
Well, because that is the less than, so commission staff may review and approve a project with less than 50 cubic yards. But then 854 says in addition to, and then says if you're within 15 feet.
Well, let me ask you, so it's your view then, if someone is doing like 1 square foot of regrading on the edge of their property by a local landscaper, that they have to get a special permit?
Yes, I mean, they have to show that it is not going to have a negative impact on the neighbors.
My view of what this says is that there's a broad exception for 20 cubic yards of excavation or less, and that section 854 doesn't apply to the exception. It applies to if you have to get a special permit, then the findings must have this, but if you are in the exception, then that 854 doesn't apply to you. That's my view, but I'd like to understand,
Yeah.
I'll dig a little deeper, no pun intended,
Yeah.
into the excavation and whether there were at some point by a previous owner or by this owner or by the nature of a retaining wall, whether there will be 20 cubic feet of excavation.
And I think that's really, I mean, we have not measured how many feet, but we can look at the plans and see that we're talking about putting in 5 feet of fill along the entire length of this wall. It's going to be more than the minimum because of how far away it is from the wall. There's a substantial amount of space between that and the boulder wall. So if the grade is now raised up to
How
meet
long
that.
is the wall? Roughly?
I have to see if it's on the actual plan.
Kevin, what about the excavation associated with putting the actual wall?
Yeah,
That
of course, I
counts,
would
And that's,
100%.
right, well, and that's, yes, and I
Yeah.
was gonna say
Well,
that.
that's what I want to understand, because
Yeah.
what the internet says, and I believe it is, that 20 cubic yards is equal to 15 feet long by 12 feet wide by 3 feet tall. That's 20 cubic yards. So I'd like you to quantify the length of the wall, the width between the wall and the boulder wall.
And the height of the wall.
Yeah, and, yeah, I mean, I think we know the height is 5
5.
feet above, or how deep the
Well, you need to know
Full
what
went
the
into?
existing grade was there to start.
yeah, right, and what happened previous to prior owner and et cetera.
Right, so this distance here,
Mhm.
from this point to this point, is 157 feet. The wall goes from here to here. So, I don't have a scale, obviously, but
Certainly over 100 feet.
it's over 100 feet.
Right.
And then we're putting 5 feet of fill behind it, and the fill would go from here all the way to the boulder wall. And then, as was pointed out, the footings go down over 3 feet, I think. We don't know, because I don't know what plans were followed, so it's a little hard for me to answer that question, because there aren't any plans for it. But the footing on those options that was presented by the structural engineer have them go down over 3 feet, which is why there was the damage to the farmer's wall on the property line.
And prior to this condition that's there now, there had to have been hundreds of cubic yards that would have been pulled out of here. Is that right, just based on it's now a flat condition except for the boulder wall?
Correct, and that was what the 2021 special permit was supposed to fix. And that's, I guess, why there was an expectation there would be a new landfilling and regrading application if they didn't follow the 2021 application, because the 2021 application included both dealing with the regrading that had been done in the center of the property as well as this area between the two properties.
So they had a special permit to regrade. They didn't follow it.
Correct.
New owner comes in and does some regrading, not sure the exact amount, and puts in a wall without going back and getting a new special permit.
Correct.
And they're not relying on the old special permit because they don't want to comply with it, and they're not getting a new one. But I guess their argument is going to be, all we did was put in a wall,
the language doesn't prohibit a wall within 15 feet, really what we're talking about is the amount of regrading, I guess, at least in my estimation.
Well, yeah, I don't know what the argument is.
Okay.
We may bring you back up. Is that good for now?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to hear from Mr. Hammond, the CEO.
Good evening, everyone. Hervé Hammond, Zoning Enforcement Officer. So a little bit of background, though, because I think it's important. They were, Woody and I, Mr. Woodside and I, visited the site quite a few times before it changed hands. We had several cease and desist for construction equipment being stored at the site and construction material in the form of small boulders, we're going to call them, like large stones. I even had at least 2 or 3 other applicants come and try to purchase the site. There was a lot of baggage with it, and they backed away until Mr. Vebi from VS Construction did purchase the land, cleaned it up from what was there, took care of the non-conforming little cottage that was along the street, went along what we asked him to do for the site. When, I'm going to call him Woody because we work together, right?
That's okay.
When Woody and I went to the site, we did a very serious concern, once it was kind of cleared up, about the stability of these boulders. We walked the site. We walked the site with Mr. Perron, right there, and he expressed that he was concerned that the boulders were going to roll into his living room. These are his words. I wrote them down in my notes. Because, construction activity hadn't started, but the wall was exposed. There was not a lot of planting. I think there was a couple of trees in between, and there's always been these pretty significant sized boulders. When you're down in the Perron's property, you're staring at something. If it slides and roll down, we had no idea if the wall was strong structurally. We asked our chief building inspector to come in and assess. He thought it was okay, but I don't think we never got a really oh, sure, no problem. This is built like, a fortress. There was always a doubt. We asked a structural engineer, and you have the report in your thing, who said that he thought the wall was, again, in his word, not bad, but he would recommend to build a toe wall. That toe wall is something that we took as a strong recommendation of safety and protection for the Perron. Because thinking if any of these boulders was going to slide or settle, there would be a strong enough structural wall with a foundation and an L shape underneath and reinforcement that would prevent any of these big rocks to just go any further. So.
And what was happening with the construction of the home at that point? Had that started?
It hasn't started at that time of all the permitting. It hasn't started.
Okay.
It's shortly after they started digging and stuff, but the wall was considered and approved as part of the foundation because we thought that was a greater guarantee for the stability of the overall site. So it was impossible for me as a ZO to look at it and detach the foundation permit to the wall permit, which some other people have asked, why didn't you do 2 different permits? Because there really was a concern that as the foundation was going to be dug, that there would be any sort of settlement from these big boulders that had been brought. Now, I personally never heard any complaints from the Perron before when Mr. Lombardi was there for having brought boulders. He did get a special permit because he was going to do something, but he never got around to doing it. That was the nature of the overall story, right? When the structural engineer proposed their solution with a straight wall, they committed to a 5-foot above final grade of the lower part throughout. And that one of the plans says that, plus, you see the plans say +5 all the way along. Certainly it appears right now that some of the grading that they had to do or some of the digging they had to do to create the foundation has not been pulled back or put back, especially when it's at the very top towards I-95. That's where the wall is quite tall. Mm-hmm. Now, I personally believe that they could fill back in where it was. So are you doing, one of the questions for Mr. Fillington is, when you do regrading, what do you consider? Do you consider the amount of impact and disturbance? Or do you say, here's what it was, this is what we need to do by digging, and we're putting it back to where it was? Now, the 20 cubic yard will be an interesting number to assess, because at the very top of the wall, they certainly dug quite a bit to found stable ground to put that toe wall, right? Now, they're supposed to bring the grade back, and I have a letter of agreement with VS Construction to make sure that at the end of the day, the visible part of that wall is no more than 5 feet.
So I take your point, but before, so how much dirt would you, put aside regrading, how much dirt would you say in cubic yards that you think they took out of it?
Now, I'm not an engineer, so I
No, no.
really can't quantify that. I did a more approximate job on the next project we're gonna talk about. But I don't think, I cannot give you a number. But one of the statement was made to create this flat platform at the top. That's not correct. The wall is below the very top of the boulder, and it's just a gully of dirt that's created, so it's not.
What kind of digging did they have to do to get that wall in
I
there?
think you'll have to ask the contractor, because I was not on, they had to make sure they were on solid ground in order to get the toe wall to function properly.
Okay, but just to answer your question,
It is,
the statute-
overall, I mean, I'm pretty sure I agree with you that overall, if you count what you remove and what you put back, you're more than 20 cubic
Okay.
yard.
and just
But
to
as
answer,
a
okay,
net result,
understood, but I just want to point out that the statute doesn't just say shall not regrade more than 20, it says shall not regrade, fill, or excavate any land.
so would that be in order for the project to proceed? Or would it be the final result being fill,
My point
excavation, and
is,
regrading?
I think the statute says in pretty clear language, if you excavate, put aside whether you're going to put it back or not, if you excavate more than 20 cubic yards of soil, you need to get a special permit first.
Okay.
That's what I believe it says.
All right. Typically, the ZEO does not do the evaluation of land filling and regrading. It's done by Jeremy and Fred, and it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I use their condition to apply to the zoning permit. So if it doesn't go to them, or if they judge, it could be verbally or in writing, that it doesn't need a regrading, I don't typically get involved.
Understood.
And in this case, I just want to stress out the one thing that to me is the most important is this wall was built for safety. This wall was built to protect the Perron from a potential issue that the construction was not taking care of because it's just not feasible to remove all these boulders. They were there. There was,
Yeah, and I compliment the town for putting safety first. I just wonder if there would have been other alternatives that seemed less permanent than this wall that could have provided for a safe situation while a
Right.
special permit was sought.
And Hervé, can you speak to the as-built versus the plans?
So the as-built of the foundation,
Yes.
when I look at the as-built of the foundation for the structure, for the house, I prioritize what the zoning compliance is for the house and the structure. For me, the wall was not in a finished stage, so an as-built as an interim situation or condition where the foundation is complete, you're ready to do the framing, but whatever is site improvement is not complete until all the final topography and the final landscaping and the final regrading is done. So I'm not judging, I was not, excuse me, I was not judging the exact height of the wall as per the as-built for the foundation of the structure, knowing that there would still be some regrading to be done. And some has been done since, actually, maybe not all complete, but to me, the as-built survey of the wall is really going to come at the very, very end, which is why I have a conditional letter to the construction company saying, if it doesn't pan out and it's too tall, and it's not what was said in what was approved, you're going to have to do something about it. Either cut the wall down or find another solution that's agreeable to the neighbor.
So the foundation permit since the new retaining wall is included as part of that set of drawings, as part of that
Yeah.
permit?
Yeah,
So there's a condition on the sign off or whatever it's termed, that says the wall has to meet the elevations that are on the foundation drawings?
no, I don't think there was a condition set for the wall specifically, that it had to meet the height at the time of the as-built for the foundation of the house.
But there's a condition, right, whatever the
Yeah.
exact wording is. Does the builder have to prove that that new retaining wall, which is different than what it originally started as, right? It shrunk down. Is there a condition that says that they have to come back and prove that it's at the elevation, right? Because the grading doesn't necessarily matter, right? You could shoot the top of the wall and say, okay, the drawings say top of wall is,
52.8?
yeah, whatever. These are kind of hard to read, right? Do we have that information now to know that
The
this
wall-
wall as built is
Yeah.
at the
The
elevation
wall
it's
is at-
supposed to be at?
Yeah, the wall is at the elevation is supposed to be at, or close enough that it's significantly close. But I think that they misjudged the height of the wall as the wall escapes from the closest part to Mr. Perron's house as it goes to 95. It just becomes, it's horizontal, the top of the wall is constant. And in reality, I think they should have designed it staggering down, because there's a much less need to hold the boulder at the end. Also because they went away with it.
But the drawings do show it staggering down, right?
No, it doesn't. It's a straight wall. 52.8 is at both ends.
Hervé, I'm a little sympathetic because you inherited this project halfway through, and I'm sympathetic to Webby for purchasing this property. I don't know how you purchased this property. I don't know what went wrong here. This whole thing is a disaster. I feel for the Peronis. How did this happen? I haven't seen one clear set of plans. I haven't seen anything that, when I went out and looked at the site, it looks like it's about to fall down, even with this wall.
Which one's going to fall down?
The rocks that are all piled up there
Yeah.
look concerning to me.
That's what Woody and I thought about, so that's why we.
I'm glad
But
you
then
put in
we
the
were
retaining
told-
wall.
We were told no. So we were told, those are big enough boulder, they probably won't slide. So like, well, let's protect this.
But how
property.
did this project keep going? How are these builders able to keep going with this project? They had cease and desist orders and they kept going.
No, Webby didn't have any cease and desist. order.
Webby did, but the
Lombardi
guy
did.
prior to him
Yeah, the
did.
prior owner did. He
So-
didn't do anything about it. He just he cleaned up the site from the construction engine. We got, complaints from the next door neighbors. Every 2 months, we had a complaint from one of the adjacent neighbors saying it's horrible to look at. So eventually, when the land got sold, it was great news, so.
I think it's sad that we're here, that this has happened, that this has gone on for the years that it's gone on. Everybody in this room is a victim of this. What can be done about this now? Like, where are we going with this?
Well, the question, I think, and I agree with you, I think the question is, what else, out of what the existing conditions are, what would be agreeable to the Perron? Taking
Right.
the wall down would then expose them to potential boulder sliding.
Correct?
So taking the wall further down in terms of height is something that, I'm going to keep on calling you Webby, but.
And I'd like to hear from
Webby-
Webby and the Perrons about what they
Webby
feel.
has agreed that once he's done, everything is stable, and he's ready to, get the land to be better, maybe he will have to remove some of the boulders, and maybe he'll have to lower the wall as well. But we have this agreement that, we're gonna, before the CO is issued, there will be certainly some condition for the CO to be approved.
Yeah.
And that's the leverage, that's the one leverage we have, and Webby is very well aware of it, and he's been working with us. I mean, we've been trying to make sure we get everything under control.
So there was a building permit issued for this wall, it was just under the foundation?
It was part of the
application?
foundation of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does it go from, because this is not what was in the original, was this?
Right.
Yeah, there is a
amendment to
variance
the-
there. It's, you want to call it construction conditions, it's a little, I know, right.
I mean, the wall
It's
was
a
covering
few
the
feet off, yes.
entirety of the boulder wall.
Yeah, this is
Now
not a
it's-
plan that we've seen. This is,
This is the as-built.
right.
This is the as.
So it's a smaller wall, which actually, when you look at the picture, it's big enough. I mean, in terms of its presence on the site.
But it
So
seems
it's-
like they just did on-site what they thought they should do. They didn't follow a plan, they just, no?
I think they did what they could do, because it's very hard to express a boulder wall in paper,
Yeah,
right? But when you're on the site, the big rocks where they slide, if on top of digging, you have to do home ramming and using your jackhammer, which was not something that was approved.
okay.
That's a whole other thing that you have to get another special permit for, so.
So that explains maybe why the plans are a little off.
So not,
Is
not.
there,
Go ahead.
sorry, I guess I'm a little surprised that there can be a plan that's in the approved, Darien reviewed the drawings and approved them, that shows, I did some rough math, it was like 160 something feet long, right up close against the boulders, which is it's very
The-
high,
yeah,
it was highly unlikely to be able to
High
accomplish that
expectation, yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
To then just install something that is, I got like 90 feet or something, that's 70 feet shorter and 10 feet closer to the neighbor. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, 8 feet, I scaled it, don't quote me on any of those. There's, in Darien, a builder can just, or landscaper, whoever, can just say, this is the plan that's approved, but I'm gonna do it this way instead, and it's
No,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Agreed.
unacceptable.
It's not, I agree, it's not acceptable, but I think maybe Webby can explain
Okay.
what the construction conditions were that pushed him to create the wall where it is.
And that's fine, I guess my question is he doesn't have to come back and talk to the building department and say, hey, by the way, I did a test pit or I did a probe at the bottom of this wall, the boulders actually come further, I gotta slide the wall out, and oh, by the way, I wanna shorten it 70 feet. That mechanism doesn't exist here?
Ideally, in an ideal world, it probably should be that way.
Because if you're the Perones, what are you thinking? I mean, you're sitting there going, well, where are we in this process,
Right.
right?
Agreed.
I mean, they're watching this thing get closer and closer. It's scary looking. I'd love to come back to you, but I want to give the Perones and Webby a chance to also speak.
Can I just ask one more
Go ahead.
question?
Yes, please.
One more question before we end. I'm talking about regrading, not about the wall.
Sure.
More broadly, what is the town's view on if someone has a special permit for whatever it is, or a building permit for whatever it is, and they do work that blatantly violates that permit, whether it's a special permit or the building permit, blatantly violates it, and they get stop work orders, they get whatever, and then they just wash their hands, they sell the property to somebody else, but all this illegal work has been done. What's the town's view about the new owner inheriting all this illegal work and getting to just take the advantage of it and get the value of that?
Well, it's not a very optimistic scenario.
Well, that's what happened here.
That's exactly what happened here.
Yeah, so,
Okay, well,
I
you
mean,
can come up next and test
the special permit didn't carry through, and what I don't know actually legally, and that would be a good question for town council, is does a special permit that's been approved become an obligation on the site itself?
Yeah, it should.
And
You don't think
if
it
it's a
should?
different owner,
It doesn't.
if it's a
but
different owner, I think it shifts over.
It's a permit,
So it
not a
disappears.
requirement, but
Yeah.
okay.
What?
I said it's a permit, it's
Not-
not a
yeah.
requirement.
Right, so
It
it's
doesn't
not,
go with the land.
it's not a variance that goes with the land,
Right.
it's not a part of the deed, it's a special permit that's not acted upon, which was taking care of a violation that existed, but was purely associated with one owner. So the new owner comes and he's not inheriting, he's inheriting something that hasn't been resolved, and he resolved it in the best possible way for him, but.
Okay.
Was there any formal town notice given to the previous owner who put in the boulder wall that was not, I mean, that wasn't allowed,
So they may have
right?
been, that would be under Woody's time, because I wasn't at the town yet. So I don't know if there were any cease and desist. for
Yes, my
putting the
understanding is that
boulders.
there were cease and desists.
That was under Mr. Keating.
Well, Dave Keating was the zoning enforcement officer at the time. I don't believe there was a notice of violation put on the land records about the construction of the boulders. There frankly was more focus on the contractor work and things that were going on.
The use of the parcel was a bigger issue than the boulders themselves. And he brought them over time too. It's not like I think it didn't happen just in one day, it's just little by little. Same way he was bringing his construction material, the pile of, anyway. Okay.
It's a mess.
I can
Perfect,
come
thank
back
you.
if you need me, but-
Let's take a pause, we may come back to you.
Yeah.
Perone, Furby, do you want to come up and speak? And then, Bob, do you want to speak with him, or you want to go next?
Thank you.
Just remember to
Thank you.
state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
Vebby, I'm sorry, I called you Verby, Vebby, sorry.
Vebby V-E-B-I, last name is G-J-Y-L-I-Q-I. I'm V&A Construction and Builder and also homeowner of this property. So, and all this, what I'm hearing today, I bought this property like 24, and it was mess. I came in, I came to the town, talked to Woody, Hervé, and said, what I need to do to clean up this. And I went and I cleaned up everything. So that was first step. The neighbors been happy. Mr. McCrone, I met them. They've been happy, and then we started the process. I had my engineers. They say the wall is good, and then the town engineer said, safety, we need a wall, and then we have to design. So we designed the walls, we designed the plans, we started the process. I didn't do nothing without like my head. Like I have like engineers every time there. I have building inspectors. The day I start the wall and the footing, I have everybody there. So I wait 65 days to get the permit for the footing. That's how long it took me to get the permit because of the wall. Anyway, long story short, it's all this wall, whatever the picture was before, the wall, the boulder wall, it goes angled. The survey as built shows the line in the top view. But when you dig it, you have to go to the bottom of the wall. And we have no option. We have to start right there and come up. So the wall is here, but this wall goes all the way here. We have to go in the bottom of the footing to start the wall. That's the only way we can do it, because we can't take boulders from the bottom and go closer. That's the best close we can get. And I do have a picture here, but maybe.
We have a lot of pictures too, Vebby, it's a disaster.
No, this one
So
here.
you're saying that
It's you.
the starting point for basically the bottom of your
you can see
excavation
this,
is as
yes.
close to?
Yeah, on one side we put a foot in, on the other side we can't go, it was so close.
But Vebby, when this is going on, do you stop and talk to anyone, or are you just making game time decisions?
I have an engineer coming over to lay out.
Okay,
I have engineer coming over when we dig it. When we put the rebar and everything else, we have the building inspector come in, not Woody, but building
Vidi-
inspector.
Mike Vidi's coming.
Mike Vidi, his guys. They come over and they look at, they do the inspection, and then I pour. It's a process.
okay.
And also, Mr. Macron, the neighbors, I asked them to use the property and to go in their land. They let me to use the property, go in with the machine there. They've been so nice. All this happens, I had no idea. I was like in dark. So that's why, but I did everything what Don told me to do, so.
Okay,
I think it's standing for the proposition
I mean-
that this is the bottom of the boulder wall there.
Can we get a hard copy of this or something to have in the record?
Yeah, and that's basically anything we did, like, it was like just process. And I didn't do nothing like, I think he mentioned the builders or landscapers go there and do job like whatever they want. No.
But you don't have to go, when the wall shifts so much in plan, right? It definitely shifted in plan. I think you would agree with that, right?
I didn't know. The wall does a shift in plan.
it's not
The
shifting,
wall-
it's the reality of what
the
you open
reality
it
of
up
the
and you
work.
see, it's not what we
No,
thought.
when you-
Absolutely shifted in plan. It's shown in plan here, which is one dimension, and it's a shorter dimension. So it's shifted in plan.
Well, I think the reality is he opens it up and sees that it's different. Oh, that's
I
your
got it.
point,
It's
okay,
uncovered a field
got it.
condition that.
When you say shift, I'm afraid you're talking about the thing
No,
fall, okay,
no,
right, it
no,
didn't shift,
saying
but
The
it's.
the plan view is from the top. You see in the top of the wall. The plan, nobody was there to dig it down and to see how angled that stone wall going down.
So, Vebby, you're trying to do the right thing. You're working with all the right people, all the experts to get this thing done. Just a disaster for you. And you're working with the
Yeah, it was more
Perones. They're
expensive
pretty
than
happy
to-
with
yeah.
you. They're just frustrated with the situation. Okay. Bob, what are you going to say about this whole thing? What's your pitch here?
I'll be short.
'Cause you
I
told
doubt
me-
it. Go ahead.
You told me to be short
Thanks,
before.
Bob, please, yes.
Well, we agree with everything that Hervé said.
State your
That's
name for
short.
the record,
I'm sorry.
please.
Robert Maslin, representing V&A Construction, Inc., Incorporated. Oh, I guess we turned that off. Okay, yes, this is a mess. But a couple of things that were discussed before, during the previous presentations. One, and I think somebody mentioned this, the special permit allows somebody to do something, but it doesn't require it. So it's not appropriate to say, well, this was a special permit and you violated it. That's just not the case. Vebby came along, goes to planning and zoning, and the staff looks at the wall, and based on their input, he gets a structural engineer to examine the wall, write a letter, and at the bottom of the letter it says the wall's fine, but as an extra precaution, put in a toe wall, basically. So the staff says, put in a toe wall. The plan did not include this in the first place, so it's not like somebody's trying to get away without filing a permit.
No, I think it was
They
the safe
required
and
it.
appropriate thing
Yes.
to do. Thank you.
So that's number one. Number
Okay.
two, I know we're talking about backfill and grading, but a couple of points. One, I disagree with the concept of digging a foundation and then using that hole or trench to put in a foundation for a wall and then fill it back up again counts toward the 20 cubic yards. It just doesn't. Think about it. When you dig a foundation for a new home, you're way over 20 yards, and yet you're not getting a filling permit or an excavation permit. Hervé's right on this. It's really the finished grade that matters, number one. Number two, and this is worth considering, a wall up to 6 feet is allowed right up to the property line. Now, I'm saying, aside from the grading, but you can put a solid wall 6 feet high right along a property line, as long as it's not the front property. If it's the front, 4 feet until you get to the front setback. So a wall of that height in and of itself is not a violation. If there's a concern about the backfill, in discussions with Hervé, I believe one of his points is this wall is supporting an existing grade, and the backfilling on it is filling in the gap between what has to be pretty much a straight up and down rebar reinforced wall and the existing boulder wall that's there. The other issue here, and you're going to hear about this a little bit more later on because it's been a real problem, but the permit was issued some time ago now for the foundation and for the wall. And the time to appeal the concept of a wall was within 30 days of that permit being issued. Yes, we have issues with current compliance, but the site work is not finished yet. And Hervé still has to do a final inspection and sign off on the wall when it's finished. And if changes have to be made, and Vebby already committed to this, you heard about an agreement. If he has to lower the wall, put stucco on it, put landscaping in, whatever it takes to make it satisfactory to Hervé and most likely the neighbors, he's going to have to do that. But now's not the time to go through that because the project's not finished yet. But throw that out there just as a consideration, because really, what do you do now? There's nothing to revoke. There's nothing to overturn right now.
Is there an expectation that you will need a special permit for the regrading?
Not now. Because, and the reason I say that is because the staff, the ZEO, has issued a permit for construction of this wall. And now that that wall has been built based on the permit being issued, it's hard to say, all right, now go back and get a special permit.
Well,
Because there's a doctrine called municipal estoppel. When a permit's issued and when there's discussions with zoning enforcement people and As a result of those discussions and the issuance of the permit, the developer acts to his detriment, you wind up with a municipal estoppel issue. I don't want to dwell on that, because Vebby is very willing to help straighten this mess out by doing whatever needs to be done to correct whatever needs to be corrected.
Does anybody have an estimate of how many cubic yards of fill would be needed to get to finished grade?
I'm not sure how that works, because the grade on the Perone side has to get filled up a little bit to finish.
The grade didn't change. The grade, if you look at
Go
the
ahead,
elevation.
you got to step up here.
But the grade didn't change. If you look at the plans from the site plan, elevation of the site plan, the grading, and when it's finished, it didn't change. Even the wall I built it, in the right side, the plan they proposed was to be like 6 feet higher in corner, and I lowered the wall. Even the engineer letter that you can say, I mean, I lowered complete the wall. Like in the right side, supposed to be the wall higher. And same thing in that corner, because of the elevation of the ground. It was before of the wall.
So my understanding, you just say that you will not need to do any filling?
We do the filling didn't change. Like what I'm saying, the grading was not changed. We're just gonna backfill the way it was before, and that was the original grade. The only thing right now is no finish, because we dig it.
But so behind the wall, you're not gonna put any additional
Behind the wall,
fill
yeah,
in there?
behind the wall is just
Okay,
go
how
right
much?
there. But just, it's the same thing, because the stone wall was right there. We're just gonna go to that, we're not changing the grade.
But you're gonna put some fill
fill.
back in,
Yes,
right? But between the wall, between the toe wall and the boulder wall, you're gonna put some
We're gonna put
fill
some
in there.
fill over there, yes.
Right, about how much do you?
I don't know how much that, but
How long is the wall roughly?
100 feet.
It's 100 feet?
Yeah.
And it's 5 feet tall?
It's gonna be 5 feet in finish, yes.
And
But it's only in the backside.
and the dirt on the backside is gonna be filled all the way up to the 5 feet?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
Is it?
No, because we have boulders. The
Okay.
boulders, some of the boulders
Right, okay.
that are touching to the wall already, like going like this. It's not much fill, because if we dig it a little bit, it's gonna hit the boulders. Right now you can see dirt because the dirt is over the boulders, but the wall goes an angle. And that's the reason was the wall, to build it, to protect the boulders,
Okay.
Boulder walls. The boulder wall part
Yes.
of it's on an angle.
the complete angle.
Okay. So we're gonna try and keep this moving. Thank you. Are we good for now?
well, I have a question.
Go ahead. Wait, hold on, Bob.
So
Kevin.
the same question I asked Hervé, what is your view on a situation where there's a building permit or a special permit granted, owner blatantly violates it, owner sells the property to someone else, they don't have any obligation to go to the town and seek a permit to legalize what was done?
I don't agree with the premise. The premise seems to be the prior owner got a special permit,
Right?
but the current owner didn't implement it.
No,
Did
I'm not,
something different.
I agree with your assessment that
Okay.
a permit does not mean you're required to do it. Like, if someone got a special permit to put a gas station in, they say, you know what, I don't want to do that, I just want to do regular retail. I don't think they're required to do the gas station. So I'm going to grant your position that if a permit does not run with the land, it's not a requirement. However, if someone starts work under a permit and they blatantly violate that special permit by, for example, taking out grade that wasn't approved, not doing a certain wall, and then they just sell the property, they walk away, someone else comes in. They don't have any obligation to go back to the town and legalize what was done. They can just take advantage of that work and build to their heart's content.
It depends on what the special permit was for and what the violations were. If the special permit was to do grading along a part of the property, like where we're talking about here, we had those steps, but they did something else on the property without doing the steps, then I don't consider that a violation of the special permit. It's just a decision not to go ahead with the special permit. Demolition was required because that old cottage or whatever it was non-conforming, right? You've seen it a million times, right on the road. I don't know the extent of the work that the prior owner actually did, but there's legally one big factor here. There's no notice of violation on the land records. There's no violation pending once that you see a special permit in the file. The special permit does get recorded on the land records. But again, it doesn't, the two of them, for a buyer doing a regular title search, is not going to see a direct connection unless there's something in the files that says, in order to resolve or correct the cease and desist order or the stop work order or whatever it may be called, this is what we're going to do. That's different, but that's not what happened here.
Yeah, but it can't be the position that a prior owner does anything illegal they want, but it's not caught by the town, and so therefore it now becomes like legally non-conforming?
Oh, no, that's not the case.
Okay.
That's not the case.
One other question for me.
But the one thing that happened here was there's a whole brand-new application with a new set of building plans.
Right, but it's
and all
also
that.
about, in many ways, the same sort of thing, regrading the side, a wall in one place versus another. So it seems fairly similar. And just one last question for me, if you want to respond to that.
Except for one thing. When the new application is in, whether it's just at the staff level or not, that's your starting point. Whatever happened in the past is not really relevant anymore because there's a permit in place to do something according to those plans.
Isn't the backfill that needs to be done on this wall part and parcel of what should have been submitted as part of the application? Like, it seems like that is integral to the installation of the wall itself, no?
I think
Only if there's a special
I think it
permit?
would.
It's
I
only
think it
integral if it's a
would.
part of the special permit?
Well,
But
that's
it's,
my point.
you'd have to ask Hervé that, because he approved it. And, you know, if a significant amount of regrading that involves a change in the overall grade was necessary to put the wall in, then,
Do you want to come back up?
you know, but if he decides you don't need to do that, then
One point to do this, and to your train of thought. I think it's fair to say that there are some violations that are zoning compliance that we can identify and say there's absolutely no way anything can proceed. We have all these non-conforming houses. We have a non-conforming house, it changes, the house changes hand, the condition of non-conformity stays. And if there was a violation with a shed in the wrong place, the shed is still there. When it comes to regrading, I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's a bit of a loophole. If the regrading has been done and never gone in front of, or never had a notice of violation issued, or nobody complaining about it, and there's no record of it, it becomes the new grade. The same way, it does. The same way, I know when I used to work in New Canaan, you created a ditch where water came out and skunk cabbage established itself, it became wetlands. Well, it became wetland because it was man-made 10 years before, but it was a condition that had become part of the starting point. So on this parcel, can we say that the regrading from the prior owner created a condition that was becoming the new condition? I don't know. That's kind of an interesting legal question. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay.
I think the time to raise that is when the builder comes in with a set of plans and sits down with the zoning enforcement officer. And at that point, the zoning enforcement officer can say, well, this ground over here was 5 feet higher before, and now look what it is. There's been a change. Where's your permit? Or vice versa, you know. I mean, that, unfortunately, some things just...
Maybe that's right in the perfect world. That's not the question we're being asked today, like the right process and timing to have done it. We're being asked a very specific question by the applicant.
The applicant meaning the appellant?
Yeah, the
or-
appellant, the
or-
applicant to us, which is the appellant.
Okay, all right.
Woody, were there not cease and desist orders on file for this property? Going back?
Not regarding the boulders. Other issues, yes.
Like
Other
material,
issues.
material storage.
Not necessarily the grading.
Yeah.
Well, I think Dave Keating did issue one notice because there'd been regrading along the road. There'd been all this stockpile of rocks, and the previous owner was, I'll say, moving them around. Dave basically said, stop moving them around. Stop digging until you have a special permit. So there was that part of it.
Okay. All right.
Just to follow on that, when the new owner comes in and says, here's my plan, if the staff says, well, you got these cease and desist orders, you have to correct them. Well, then you deal with it. If he doesn't say anything about them, he's looking at a new plan with, obviously grading because topography on the survey is
Right.
required and all of that. So where do you draw, it gets really, really hard for a new owner and a developer to come in and assume that nobody's gonna raise
Yeah.
some previous violation.
Yeah.
He's gonna be thinking, well, I have my permit, I did everything right.
Yeah.
The other,
Thanks.
just to finish, where do we go from here?
Right.
That's the issue. The permit that's appealed right now is, I believe, it's Hervé's sign-off on the foundation permit which allowed for the issuance of a building permit to build a house above the foundation.
Right.
The builder is not finished with the wall. So that's still,
So you're saying they
pending
can't
and-
appeal that yet because it's not complete?
well, that's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is, in this particular case, which is unique, Hervé and Webby have a written agreement in the file where the developer agrees as a condition before getting the final sign-off to correct issues with the wall. And the time to deal with that would be when that's all done, because if he doesn't do it, he's not getting a CO. If he doesn't have a CO, he can't sell the house.
I'm sure the Peronis are terrified it's gonna get to that point, and we might accidentally issue a CO, and this thing is
Oh,
done.
I don't think that's,
Okay.
no, too many people are watching
Okay,
this.
all right. Okay, thank you, Bob. Let's, is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to be heard on this? I'm looking at the Peronis, I'm looking at Reese, I'm looking, no? Amy, do you want to come back up? Amy, what do you want done on this? Given what you've heard today, I'm not sure what we can do until this house is complete, if you're listening to Bob.
Well, I disagree with that.
Okay.
So the issue is that the way that the regulations are written, I can only appeal a decision of the ZEO.
Okay,
And that's important because, for example, if a ZEO refuses to enforce the zoning regulations, you can't appeal that. I know that seems
I
like
understand
kind
what
of
you're
a
saying.
double negative, but that's
You
not
can
an
only
appealable issue. I can only appeal if
a
there's a
decision that's been made, correct.
So I very explicitly, when I was brought onto this, I very explicitly contacted Hervé and Mr. Ginsburg, and I said, what is the status of this permit? Because I also at that point, couldn't find any of the permits. A lot of the documents weren't in there, and, that was a whole other problem, but that's been resolved, so I'm not gonna rehash any of that. But I said, and I was told that a decision was made to give a CO to the foundation and wall. That was a decision of the ZEO, and that is what I appealed within 10 days of it being issued.
I'm confused about that because I thought it was all contained in one building permit.
It was, the building permit for the
John, is
foundation
that right? They can do that?
and
That's all?
wall.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
I count on you for this, John. Okay, go on, continue.
I don't know how adhering
He signed off on the building permit. They always bifurcate building permits to a foundation permit and then the rest of the house.
Okay.
You can't file your building permit for your house
Until the
until
foundation.
your foundation is approved.
Okay, so that was approved, and that's what you're appealing.
I appealed the date that the foundation,
Okay.
which included this new wall.
That's incorrect, if I may.
Hold on, Hervé, you have to come up, please. Come.
We approved a dwelling and framing permit when the as-built of the foundation is approved, not the CO of the foundation. The CO of the foundation comes all the way at the end at the same time as the CO of the whole building.
So there's a misunderstanding here?
There is no CO of this,
So what did you
with this
approve?
wall.
What did you
I
approve?
approved the as-built survey of the foundation, which includes the wall in its location, but it's an as-built, not a CO.
And approving the as-built allows them to do what?
The dwelling and the framing,
Allows
building-
them to proceed with the work for the
with the
dwelling
work
and framing?
above grade.
So Amy, in your mind, it does the same thing. It allows them to move forward.
But
It
it's
is
not
a-
a CO.
I apologize.
Okay.
It's not a CO.
So I
it
got
is
the
a-
words
it's a-
wrong, but they're able to move forward, and you don't like that part.
It's a separate permit to do the building, and it was a decision was issued by the zoning enforcement officer on September 13th, and we appealed it on September 23rd.
Okay. What do you want?
Well, I think that this needs to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a landfilling and regrading application, so it can be fully vetted in terms of potential impacts to the neighbor's property, in terms of drainage, you know, if and I hope that the photo that was passed around on
Debbie's phone.
On Debbie's
Yep.
phone, sorry, Mr. It does become part of the record. The low wall that you saw on that is the property line.
Yeah.
So the regrading went all the way up to, and like I said, damaged that property boundary line.
There was some testimony that your client said or asked for or commented that they are worried about the safety of it. So they're not worried about the safety of it? Their preferred situation is no wall there whatsoever?
Correct. Those boulders have been there for years at this point. They've settled. None of the boulders move. I mean, they have been jackhammering and chipping away on that site to build the house that's there and to build the basement, and they haven't moved.
So you're saying they would prefer that retaining wall goes away?
Yes.
Interesting.
But again, I think the point is that that's why we have this
process.
That's why we
where
have
you-
this process of landfilling and regrading when you're so close to the property line is for this reason, so that you can make sure that you're not negatively impacting the neighbor's property when you're doing work so close to the property line.
Okay, so you want us to get a topography survey?
I want it to go through. I want
The proper
CEO's
channels.
decision to be overturned.
Okay.
And that the process, the applicant, the property owner file a landfilling and regrading application so that it can be fully vetted and properly vetted by the Planning and Zoning Commission
Okay,
and the town engineer.
okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to be, Bob, gonna come back up? Yes, please. Give me a second, Bob, and then you're next.
What is technically before you is the decision approving the as-built, not the permit to install the wall. And so a decision to require a special permit application is, I think, beyond your jurisdiction. And this is really technical, but the permit for the wall was already issued, the appeal period has expired. Let me suggest an alternative. Allow the as-built approval for the foundation to remain. And if you're going to overturn something, just overturn the aspect of that approval that pertains to the wall, because that has to be dealt with eventually anyway. And that would clearly be in your jurisdiction if Hervé is correct that he approved the as-built wall.
What's the, I
And
don't
that-
understand the difference. What, can
I
you say
think because that
again?
way they can keep working.
So
Yeah.
you can keep working on the house.
Yes, what they're
Well, there's been no testimony that, and I don't think
That the
there's any
foundation is
evidence
the issue, it's
that
the
the
wall.
foundation for the house or the construction of the house is in violation somehow. So there's no reason to overturn Hervé's approval of the as-built as it relates to the building foundation, not the wall. The wall seems to be the focus of this
Understood.
entire proceeding, so.
I just want to get your view and then Amy's view on this question. Is it your view that on a request for an interpretation, not a variance, we can approve in part and deny in part?
You can't, you can interpret things only if it's in the context of an appeal of a decision of a CEO. You can't make your own interpretation.
Right, I understand that.
That's number one. Number
Yeah.
two, you can make an appropriate order. I'm saying that with respect to the wall, just reverse the approval, leave it pending, because we still have to finish it, and Hervé already has committed to correcting whatever deficiencies he needs to correct. And if they can't reach an agreement, then I'm sure we'll be back, or we'll be at the commission. That just
But if
remains to
we,
be
if
seen.
we find in favor of the appellant in relation to just the wall and not the overall foundation, is your view that you would have to go get a special permit for the wall?
Not
and any? So what would you do? You would just,
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Continue on and stay on this issue of making it comply and making it satisfactory to the next door neighbors. Pursuant to the agreement
Yeah,
that's
I
already in
understand-
place.
I understand what
you
you're
know.
saying, but I mean, the reason why we would find in their favor on that would be because you didn't get a special permit, so.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
There is an argument that Amy made that the plan as the wall as built is significantly different from the wall that was approved in the original zoning approval. And you can find that. I'm not giving away my case, I'm not supposed to do that, but it's an
Okay.
alternative.
You're doing
to-
great, Bob.
It's an alternative to reversing or overturning the ZEO decision approving the building.
Okay. Amy, can we
I
hear
don't know
you
if
on that
that's-
point?
I don't know what Amy's thoughts are on that.
Amy, approach. Amy, approach.
Can
What are your
we-
thoughts on what Bob has said? Yeah, should we separate out the two? We just continue with the building and the foundation and then just isolate the wall issue?
I mean, the problem is that that's not the way that they,
Issued the building.
the permit was issued. Hervé has made it very clear that he thinks those two things are integral with one another. And, you know, frankly, if we just sort of go on and don't have a full and clear stop and let's do this the right way, I'm afraid it's not ever going to get resolved.
Okay?
I'm thinking.
Hervé?
Yeah.
Thank you.
If it's not resolved, it won't get a CO. So, I mean, it's just as simple as that. If it's not to the, close to the approved plans and close to what we approved and what was agreed with Vebi in terms of lowering and tempering and plastering, if it's not satisfactory, now, I don't know if we can work in a clause that, with input of the adjacent property owner, or if there is any sort of regard. I'm a little disheartened by hearing that we never heard that the boulders would roll in the living room. I mean, I don't know if Woody remembers it when it was during a walk with Mr. Perron's children. And there was a very, very clear statement, which really, if you're a zoning enforcement officer, puts kind of fear in your heart. You go, oh yeah, you know what? When you look at this wall, it's pretty darn impressive, these enormous boulders. If one comes loose, forget the house that's below, because the Perron's house is really on the path, right? So I'm a little disheartened that now we're talking about taking the wall entirely altogether down to nothing, because I still think it would protect, there are extreme weather cases.
Yeah, I agree.
Big rainfall,
I agree.
so.
Okay. Amy?
But I think that's exactly the problem. If that's where I don't understand why we got to where we are, because if the town was concerned that the site was too unstable to build a house on, they shouldn't have been allowed to build a house on there. The solution isn't to build a wall to catch the boulders that roll down the hill. If the site wasn't stable, there should have been additional engineering work to confirm that the site was stable to be
Well,
built on.
there are reports that say it was stable.
And that's what I'm saying. If my client was, I've been told that my client didn't say that, but I don't want to get into he said, she said. But
Right.
the reality is, if we have an engineer's report that says that it's stable, that's what we rely upon.
Yes.
It's not the place of someone to decide, let's just build this cement wall next to the property line that no one asked for. And
Okay.
that's
So-
the problem.
So you are not comfortable with us bifurcating the two? You want to keep it all together?
I would like to see the ZEO's decision overturned and the applicant told to go and get a special permit for the regrading so that we can make sure that this is done properly.
Okay.
Is that part of the decision we make though? Or do we just overturn it?
No, that's what we would deliberate on. We would decide how to go forward. And we could do it pretty quickly, to keep this thing moving. Because I do think, Vebi, yeah, you come back up again. Because I do think you've tried to work with the neighbors. I think you've tried to bring in the experts, and I appreciate the mess you've tried to clean up. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do everything, and I don't think this is not fair for me,
Yes.
to start complete the house.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. So this is like a bottom behind, because I did everything Woody asked me
Mm-hmm.
in her way, and also my VT and engineers.
We're gonna deliberate and talk about all of this. We're gonna
I know,
factor
but
you
just
in,
this,
we're gonna
like,
factor
this is
everything.
like a bottom behind. If you guys like, if she wants like me to start like complete work and go hold on, complete the job and get special permit,
Mm-hmm.
for what? The job is done already, the wall is done. You get a permit if you don't start nothing. And I did all that. I did all the permits before I started the job. So
Well, I don't want you backfilling that wall if we're gonna take that wall out.
I'm
I
not
mean,
gonna backfill,
Okay.
okay. I'm not backfilling the wall, I can leave that wall, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop the house building,
Okay.
because that's not fair.
We're gonna deliberate about it. We're gonna talk about it. You said, sir, in the back, did you wanna come up? You have to come up to, you can't shout from the back, even though you probably have a booming voice. And please state your name for the record.
Oliver Wilson. I think Bob said it, it's kind of how you're decoupling the two problems. But then I think addressing a happy medium with the wall, whether you agree to take a couple feet off of it, like what's the end goal for the neighbor? So you can move forward. Landscaping, veneer, like a cheat on the grade. Like how do you wrap it up? That's my, like this could just keep going on. No one seems to know what they want from the neighbors. That's about it. But otherwise, I completely agree with decoupling and keep building.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? I'm sorry, this took a long time, but this is really important. This has been going on a long time. And Peroni's, I am so sorry that this has gone on.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can offer a little bit.
Yes, Woody?
Because we've focused a lot on what was the condition of the boulders when the previous owner left the property. And Mr. Bebby purchased the property. And yes, we did have concerns. We did hear about them, partly from the Perones. But one of the key things was, and I think Herbie and I both specifically asked, Bebby, do you have an engineer who can certify that the wall is stable and safe? And we never got that. We got, well, it's been placed about the way it should have been placed. The boulders look okay, but we would suggest a reinforcement wall at the toe of the boulders to prevent slippage. That's what came back to us. And that's where this new wall design
Came into play.
came about.
Okay.
So that we wouldn't have, and I think Bebby even agreed, you don't want to have a problem 6 months from now when he's trying to sell the property and a new owner is like, what have I got with this cliff and all these big boulders, and is it safe? We wanted somebody to be able to say, it is safe.
Okay,
That's background.
okay. Anybody here? We're all good? More questions?
Nope.
Okay. We're going to close this hearing. Bob, you have 1 second. What? All right.
There was an engineer who looked at it who said it's okay and recommended the toe wall.
Atlantic Consulting and Engineering?
Yes.
Sorry,
We have it.
It's okay, and you should put it.
And he suggested the toe wall,
He did.
just as a suggestion.
He said it would help stabilize it. It would just add a safety layer.
Correct. Yes, but he did look at it and
Yeah.
say specifically that it's fine and
Yeah.
just
No, he didn't
suggested.
say it was fine, Mr.
It's in the record.
Maslin. He didn't say it was safe.
Thank you, Bob. We do have it in the record. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to close this hearing. I lost my agenda. Sorry. Thanks, thank you. Okay, we're moving on. This next one is not an appeal. This is calendar number 11-2025, right?
Correct.
The application of Andrew, I'm sorry, to allow the construction and replacement 2.5-story residence at, I'm excited about this one. This is on Sedgwick. 41 Sedgwick! Yay! Please approach. Amy, again, you're up. You got 6 minutes, Amy. I'm just kidding. You have as much time as you want. Yeah, you better go fast.
seconds here, I gotta switch
No problem.
gears.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm opening like everything up. Sorry. This is the problem with going one after another.
No problem. Oh, yeah. What happened? Did it just go to sleep?
Just goes to sleep, yeah. Okay. Good evening. Amy Zabatakis, Rucci Law Group, on behalf of JBL Corporation, which is the owner of 41 Sedgwick Avenue. I'm joined by Andy and Anna Andrick. Where'd you guys go? They're there. As well as Harry Rochville, the project engineer. So I think we're all familiar with this property. I was asked to present because of my familiarity with the property as well. So the prior owners, as you know, had a fire damaged structure on a non-conforming lot in a non-conforming location and requested a variance to redo the existing house. With the conditions that were put on the variance, it was not financially feasible for them, and so the property was sold. The new owners proposed to demolish the existing non-conforming structure and build a new, more conforming structure. It is not, however, conforming. We are still within the front yard setback, and that is because, hopefully you can see my red line, that is the building envelope on this property. And in order to be able to get behind the house to, pull into a garage that they've got underneath the house and to turn around so that you're not backing out onto Sedgwick Avenue, the house does still have to be forward of the front setback line. The house does conform to the side yards, the rear yards, and the coverage. So, like I said, a huge improvement from where we were. The current house is 6.8 feet from the front property line. We're now proposing to be 18.1 feet in lieu of the 30-foot requirement. We've also got the requirements of distance from the road center line, which is why you've got a few different numbers in your legal notice. The one thing that we do have is we have the AC condensers and generator in the side yard setback. That's on the west side. That is because that's really the only place we can put them. We've got the driveway on the other side of the lot, and that would also be in the side yard setback. We can't put them in the rear of the house. They have to be more than 10 feet from the propane tank, which is in the rear of the house. That's the only place the propane tank can go. You can see the propane tank on the survey. It's this little thing that looks like a Tic Tac down in the corner. And the generator also can't be more closer than 5 feet to any doors or windows. And I think I've got the...
No natural gas on this? No natural gas on the street?
No,
Oh,
no
okay.
natural gas, it's propane.
Okay.
So you'll see there's doors and windows all along the back of the house. So we're limited in where we can put those units. The good thing is that because of the topography change, there's a big topography change from where these units are to the neighbor on that side, who is much higher. There's also substantial screening. My clients have spoken with the neighbor on that side, and they're comfortable with having those units on that side.
I don't see them here, which means you did a good job.
We believe the undersized nature of the lot constitutes a legal hardship, which has been recognized by this board in the past. as obviously there was the 2024 variance that was just granted. There was also a prior variance in 1989 granted to this property. The proposed new house will be more conforming than what is currently on the site and safer than the existing home. There's the driveway is much wider than what's existing now, and like I said, allows you to come down behind the house, turn around, and come back out again.
So you're gonna
facing
apply with
forward.
that, you're gonna comply with the proper property lines, right? There's
Correct.
that curb cut for the neighbor, okay, and then
Right.
the sidewalk's gonna be normal.
We will also work with Public Works on improving the sidewalk in that area and making sure that there are no encroachments onto the sidewalk. Again, similarly to the prior discussion and discussion with Public Works, they don't want us to say we will do work on town property. They want us to work with them because that is town property, but we will be removing the encroaching. There's that sort of landscaping wall in the front, and that'll get removed.
Okay, so how does that process work? You start with that, you start by, you demo the house and you put the sidewalk in first?
We won't be that's what I'm saying, that Public Works doesn't want the applicant to put the sidewalk in. Public Works wants to work
Do it
with
first.
the property owner.
Okay.
That they may do the sidewalk. So there will be but the encroachments will be remedied, and we will work with the town to get a wider sidewalk in that
Excellent,
area.
okay.
Do you give a sense on the rough square footage of the buildable area?
Of the buildable area.
Yeah.
Of the home, the new home?
No,
You mean
the legal
in that-
buildable area.
In that red circle.
Yeah,
You
mine's
know?
green, but yeah, roughly?
No, I thought of all the things you might ask me, and I didn't think of that.
Okay.
If you compare, our footprint isn't that much.
Yeah.
It is very similar to.
What is the square footage of the house, the new house?
Per floor, 1,000.
Come on, yeah, come on.
State your name for the record, please.
Good evening, Andrew Andriak.
Okay. What is their square footage, I guess, of the ground floor, so we can know what the size of that lot is? And then
Right.
what's the total square footage of the house you're building?
So the total square footage is roughly 2,975,
Okay.
and the per floor is 1,001 foot.
Okay, so okay, about 1,000 square feet. Okay.
Yes.
How many bedrooms and bathrooms?
3 bedrooms,
Okay,
3.5 bath.
okay.
And the height is no more than 30?
The height will be no more than 30.
Right.
Absolutely.
We have to actually put the elevation. That's what it'll look like from the front.
Yeah. It's cute.
And it's because of the grade change on the property, it will be taller when you look at it from the back, but that's where the garage will be.
Okay.
Driveway's wider than the current driveway?
Correct, but because the existing house encroaches into the side yard setback on that side, so because this house now conforms with the setback, the driveway will be wider. The driveway will still go
And it's on
up to the
the,
property
if you're
line.
looking at the right side of the house as opposed to the left, so that gives you better view corridors as you're pulling out.
The driveway is on the same side
Oh, I
of the
thought it
house
was
as
on
the
the left.
existing.
Oh,
Because of again, that was, the grade change, as you're looking at the house, the grade change on the right, which is the west side, is more extreme.
Right, right. Mhm.
There's a slope on the eastern side. So the driveway will stay in that location, but it will be wider.
And Amy, are you meeting all the requirements on unfinished space in the lower
Yes.
level and the third floor?
Yes.
Okay.
And how much further is the front of the house? So what is the encroachment now and what will it be? How much is it getting better is basically
So
the question.
the current house is 6.8 feet from the front lot line. The new house will be 18.1 feet.
So 12 feet-ish.
So we're asking, the variances we're asking for is 18.1 feet in lieu of 30 feet for the front yard, which is also 38.3 feet in lieu of the 55 from the road center line. And then that's for the house. That's the only variance we need for the house. And then for the AC and generator, the AC condensers and generator, we've got 6.6 feet in lieu of 10 feet on the side yard, and 53.1 feet in lieu of 55 from the front road center line.
Which side? That's on the
The AC
the
units
other-
and
the
generator are on
other-
the west
the
side.
It's on the really sloped
the
side.
other neighbor.
Right, so the AC and generator, you won't be able to see, so if you remember, if you're looking at the house from the road, it's high up, and then on that side of the house, there's a retaining wall that goes straight down. So the AC, I think actually I've got, you can kind of see it in this one, but here, you can see it here. This is the side, this is from the west side of the house. So the AC units and generator will be down below grade so that you won't see them from the street. And that grade change that you see is also mirrored on the neighbor's lot. There's also a fence, and I think actually I might have even, did I include a picture of that? No. But there's a fence and a grade change over there, so they won't be able to see those units either.
Speaking of neighbors, last time there was a lot of neighbor interest.
Yes.
Have you had any feedback this time from the neighbors?
Well, so from the neighbors on the side of the AC and generators, they did state that they don't have any objection. And actually, I was told they sent an email into the town, but I think it came in while we were about to start meeting.
Okay.
Did you speak with the neighbor on the other side?
I did. So we spoke about her main concern on the east side was that she's got some fairly sizable arborvitae, and she just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be trenching down where the existing driveway is now and perhaps undermining her roots or doing anything there. And I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking that off to create a new driveway, but we're not going to be going down at all. So we also spoke about, just tidying up that area a little bit too, because there's a little bit of a, right now there are 6 cinder blocks that form a right angle, which no one wants. So we're gonna work on.
She put it there to mark her territory.
That's right.
So, yeah, that woman's been through a lot, so anything you can do to be extra considerate would be
We've
great.
had a very cordial,
Thank you.
relationship.
Just on the driveway, how much wider is the driveway now been for? Because this was a big thing.
That's why she was outraged, that neighbor,
Yeah.
because of the driveway, but I guess.
They're repositioning the house though, so the driveway.
And if you'll recall, that was actually, during the last hearing, what her suggestion was that they cut off a piece of the house so that the driveway
Could be wider.
and make the side of the house conforming. So in essence, that's kind of what we're doing without cutting off the side of the house.
Yeah.
We're literally moving the house. And it also, by bringing it back further away from the road, that also improves the safety, because you've got a longer period of time when you're past the house to be able to see cars.
Okay.
So, and that side yard now is 15 feet where it was 8.5, I think. So the driveway is commensurate, is probably 10 feet wide, thereabouts, with more buffer zone on each side, next to the house and also next to her property.
Pretty certain if she was concerned, she'd be here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, they're not here, so I think something's good. Yeah, you lopped off about 5 feet of the house, nice job, okay. All right, any questions here from us? Anybody from the audience wish to be heard on this application?
Could I
Please?
clarify a couple of things?
Of
We
course.
have a couple of things in the legal notice that were related to this existing porch cover on the existing house. It's quite unusual. I hope you saw a photo of it in the staff report. So we might want to trim back. What was determined by the town historian was that it's not architecturally significant, so not a real reason to plug it into this new house. And the legal notice, I added a couple of items to allow for that front porch. Just want to say that we can clean that up in the final legal notice. I even bumped up the coverage allowance in case it was significant enough that the square footage of it would be accounted for. So all I'm saying is that we'll adjust a couple of the details in the legal notice.
Woody gave me more than I asked for.
Okay, so you're saying, even though it's not historically significant, you're anticipating that we,
He thought we might
accounted for
want
it,
to
but we
keep
don't need
that.
it.
okay,
And we don't.
Okay.
okay, thanks.
So
It's not
we're.
Bonus.
Not
You
necessary.
gonna put a chicken coop in instead or something? That's great,
All right, now we
Good.
can talk about the deliberation later about
yeah,
sidewalk condition.
okay. That's it, you good? All
Unless
right.
you have anything else for us?
Sorry, one quick, retaining wall, is that staying going?
Not
the retaining wall, the one right next to the sidewalk.
The one on the sidewalk will go because that's where it encroaches onto the town property. The wall on the
Side?
the side of the house will, there'll still be that grade change there. Whether it'll be as strong of a wall or a little bit more of a slope now, that may change in construction, but it's basically the grades are gonna stay the same.
All right, this officially closes the hearing on 41 Sedgwick. Yay! Thank you, Amy. Okay, we're on our final hearing tonight, which is also an appeal. That's calendar number 13-2025, the application of David Self for 54 Old Farm Road. Thank you for your patience, you guys. I know it's a little after 9 o'clock. We'll try and keep this moving as well as we can. Are you Mr. Self?
Mr. Self, hello.
Hello, Mr. Self.
David Self,
David
45R
Self.
Old Farm Road.
Okay,
So,
Self is
I don't have
S-E-L-P-H.
fancy computer presentations, but I do have written
All
out
right.
to try to make it easier, because it is a bit complicated,
Okay.
and it took me a long time to understand it, so.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
this will help you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
You want one as well?
I don't need one, thank you.
Anybody else want one? That'll work?
So, good evening, everyone. This is really an appeal for an as-built approval by the CEO for a wall that exceeded the required heights for the permit. So this paper I just gave you was an addendum to that to allow you to understand kind of the materials that have been provided by Mr. Harmon and Mr. Woodside. And I analyzed that material and just kind of provided more color around what the appeals were. A lot of these things were in the original appeal, so Mr. Woodside had said I had too many regulations in there.
No,
So I tried to clean it
I
up.
don't
a
think I
little
said there were too many. Just said there are a lot.
There's never too many regulations.
So going through it, I think the purpose is primarily that there's material deviations from the approved site plan. I think Mr. Harmon has acted ultra vires and kind of overstepped his bounds in approving this permit due to some of those violations. There's also a bit of denial of process because they've reversed some of the conditions that were in the original application. They removed them and then got the approval for the plan, and then built the wall with the things that were reversed. So they essentially took the permit, reduced it so that it wouldn't be appealed, and then built the original plan, and then approved it. So that's a violation of due process. And then there's a list of procedural irregularities around survey accuracy, regrading regulations, record keeping, certifications, a bunch of other stuff. And we'll go through all of that. And then because of all that stuff, I think, overall, the approval doesn't meet the requirements for the Darien zoning regulations, so I think it has to be reversed. Relief requested, so I really would like your opinion on declaring the wall as built deviates from the materially from the plan, conclude the CEO acted outside of his authority, the due process safeguards were bypassed, and find that the procedural irregularities render the record insufficient to enforce the zoning regulations. The action I'm seeking is that we declare the approval invalid and that we direct the owner to either modify the conditions so that they return to the approved permit or go seek an amendment from the Planning and Zoning Commission as per 1029. So starting off with the first thing, which is the material differences, which is number one. So I don't know if you've read Mr. Hamon's notes, but he's kind of gone through the points, and it's probably easier to start with the diagram. So go to this diagram. Mr. Harmon had 3 points on there, and they were highly irregular. So they were mixing various plans and taking like some deviation from one plan to another. So I had to go back and reconcile the exact waypoints. And there was only 2 waypoints that actually matched across all of the different surveys. So that would be the property line and the corner. And then there was a third waypoint, which is somewhere in that red dotted circle. I'm not sure where because I don't have access to the actual data, and I'm not an engineer, but it's somewhere in there. And then there's other points which are on the other side of the property, which I'm less concerned with because it's not abutting my property. So I'm purely focused on those 3 points from Mr. Harmon's survey. So what I've done is I've taken the point number 1 and kind of split it out into 3, calling it 1A, 1B, and 1C. And then I've taken, or in 1D. And then I've taken the second point and split it out into 2A, 2B, and 2C. So you can see that those are very different points across the surveys.
What does that mean?
So if you look at,
that.
if you look at like, let's say the original approved plan,
Okay.
and you would take Mr. Harmon's point number 1, which is 1A on this diagram, then he actually, and then if you look at the approved plan, there is no on property line waypoint there because there's no wall there. So what Mr. Harmon did was take 1B and compare it with the 1A in his approval for the as-built. So obviously you can't, I mean, if this was the wall here, right, and I said, hey, the height over here was approved to be 3 feet, and then I compare what the height is over here, doesn't make any sense. Because it has to be the same waypoint, right? Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Has he seen this? Has Hervé seen your?
Yeah, I've provided it. I mean, not this specific.
I've never seen
This
this.
is new.
This is new.
This is new, but these are the dots, I believe, are the waypoints that he's talking about from Hervé's analysis. So Hervé had them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're renumbering them as 1A through D and then 2A through
Right, because
C.
Hervé did not use the approved site plan.
Okay.
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 This is the approved site plan.
What is the approved site plan? This diagram here?
This diagram.
Okay.
So if you look at the approved site plan, there is no wall on the property line because the wall starts at 1B.
The wall starts at 1, yes, I see what you're saying.
But
But this references
Mr.
1A,
Hamans
and there is no 1A.
took waypoints at 1A,
And there is no 1A. Got it.
and there is no 1A.
Okay.
So it's
So he
labeled there.
started, you're saying that he started at the beginning of the wall, but the beginning of the wall is not where it is there. It's 10 feet further over.
Exactly.
Whatever the dimension is. Okay.
Okay. So who's going to address this?
The extension to the wall came later, I believe, is what's represented
So the
here.
original plan, you'd have to go back to the original plans, but if you look at the original plans, there was a wall all the way to the property line.
Okay.
Mr. Harmon, as part of his approval process, because of stormwater drainage problems, said, hey, you have to remove that because it's going to cause stormwater problems. So it was removed, and then the as-built put it back.
So Mr. Self, do you want him to address this as we go, or do you want to lay out your
I
whole?
want to lay out my whole.
Okay.
So if you look at this, these are all the points. So what I've done is just taken the factual evidence from from the approved plan and the as-built plan. Obviously, because the as-built plan didn't have the waypoints on it, we had to interpolate. So what I mean by that is the whole wall is 32 feet top wall elevation. So I just assumed the whole wall is 32 feet top wall elevation. Obviously, if it was properly surveyed, it might be 32.1 or 31.9, but the interpolation is just, hey, it doesn't really matter. It's 32, right? We pretty much know it's 32.
Correct.
Are you
And
questioning the height?
Mr. Wilson says it's correct.
And you're not questioning the height of the wall?
I'm not questioning the 32.
Okay, got it.
And you don't care about a few inches here or there?
I don't care about a few inches
Okay.
here or there. So if you look at that and then you turn back to the previous page, you have a table here which lists it all. So on the top is the top wall elevations, the next one down is the bottom wall elevations, and then you have the comparison of the approved site plan and the as-built conditions. And it's noted where it says interpolated, which means there was no way for me to compare that against the as-built because it wasn't part of it. And that's where you can get the differences in the elevation. So if you look at each waypoint, the first waypoint 1A, there was supposed to be no wall, but there was a wall that's 1.7 feet high, 1.6, sorry, 1 foot 7 inches, 1.6 feet. If you look at the second waypoint, it's 100% higher than it should be, so it should be 1 foot and it's 2 feet. If you look at the third waypoint 1C, it's 50% higher, so it should be 2 feet and it's 3 feet. So 1 foot higher than 2 feet would be 50%.
Mr. Sullivan, is it safe to say there's a theme throughout that he didn't follow the plan?
He didn't follow the plan on a single
On a single
point.
thing, okay. So this whole document is just, go
No,
ahead.
What
just
did,
this page.
what
Oh,
did,
okay.
this is, I don't really understand what it's saying, but if the wall was supposed to be here, you're saying it's here.
Well,
Along
it's
the
missing.
whole wall.
Okay, right.
There's not a
So-
single section of the wall that meets the plan.
And it's higher throughout.
By,
Are there
by,
any-
And it's
how did you-
missing in
how did you-
sections.
and then there's a
Sorry.
new structure.
How did you get the top of wall elevation? You,
Because the builder, Ms. Wilson has confirmed it, he built it to 32. So he had surveyors, and he had
and what did the drawing
masons
say?
draw a line.
What did the drawing say the top of wall elevation should have been?
So the top of wall, so if you look at that table, the approved
Says
site
30.
plan top of
Got
wall
it, 32.
should have started at 31, stayed at 31, dropped to 30, and then gone back up to
So
32.
it was supposed to stagger down.
It was supposed to go down and then up.
Sorry, is the wall's not flat on the top? Are we talking about the ground elevation or talking about the top?
Top wall. So the builder made it flat. It was supposed to go down and then up.
So I want to keep this kind of moving. So take
Yeah.
us through the rest of the
All right.
issues.
So not a single thing matches the plan, so
Right.
there's material differences.
Okay.
The second thing is that if you read the regulations, Regulation 1029 says that, so I'm sure you guys are familiar, right? There's discretionary authority and then there's ministerial authority. Anybody confused on that?
A little bit, keep going.
Okay. So 1029 says, hey, there is no discretionary authority, which means here's the rule. If it deviates in a minor way, you need to get the Director of Planning and Zoning to approve the amendment in writing. If it deviates in a major way, you need to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get your amendment approved.
Got it.
So there is no amendment that's de minimis or kind of small. You have to get an amendment. It's either from the
That's
Planning
become a
and Zoning
hot topic
Director
among us, yes.
or it's from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
No
Okay.
matter how big or small.
No matter how
It needs to be
big or
amended.
small.
Okay.
I mean, if it's like,
It's kind of
if you built
interpretive
the
language.
wall
if it's small,
1
you
inch
would just
higher
write a
than
letter
he-
to the project.
Hold on, but so if he built the wall 1 inch higher than he was supposed to, you're saying that he would technically need to go back and get
Yep.
that?
But he wouldn't
Got it.
need to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. He would just need to write a letter to Mr. Ginsburg, or Director Ginsburg, and say, hey, I built it 1 inch higher. Can you please approve that deviation? So it's a separation of duties things, right? Because if Hamon approved his own deviations, then obviously you can imagine what would happen.
Point taken. There's some discussion between all of us about that. Go ahead. Correct.
So in essence, his approval amounted to an ad hoc amendment of all the deviations we just covered, which is illegal.
Okay.
So that's called ultra vires. It's outside of his authority to approve that.
Got it.
Point 3, which we covered briefly, is a due process violation. So under Connecticut law, you need accurate, reviewable depiction of the work to be built so that the public can decide whether to comment or appeal. Basic stuff. The original site plan was uploaded. It had certain conditions on it. They were amended by Mr. Hammond to lower the wall height and to remove a section of the wall. Upon the as-built survey, all of those conditions returned. So you can see the highlighted pieces in yellow. So if you look at the first thing, the corner top of wall, the original said 32, the as-built says 32, but the plan says 30. So essentially what they did was, they said, hey, I'm going to change it so you don't appeal it, and then I'm going to build it to the original height and say, sorry, tough luck.
So you're saying they lied to the public?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Keep going.
I'm not saying that because I think there's legal implications to saying that, but I'm saying the due process was circumvented and bypassed.
Got it.
So what I'm asking you guys to do here is just express, is make an express due process finding, compare the elevations in the drawings that were published in the legal notice with those on the as-built survey. If the record shows the finished wall stands up to 2 feet higher and the base elevation are materially different, then there's established Connecticut laws that say that's not allowed.
What would you find an adequate resolution to this whole thing?
He builds the wall to his permit.
So take down the whole wall, rebuild it to the
No,
proper.
just drop it 2 feet.
Just drop it 2 feet, okay. That's the solution you're looking for.
Yep.
Got it, okay? We could come back to you.
Well, there's more.
Okay, oh, keep going.
So the fourth one is procedural
Oh, I'm
irregularities.
sorry, yep.
You can read through that if you like.
Okay,
It's all there. But
yes.
essentially, I'm saying there were 7 things done that in normal course of planning and zoning process are irregular. Would you like me to go through them?
I guess I was thinking these were all part of,
These are all, like, you can invalidate the approval on any one of these things. So take your pick, or take all of them.
let me see, unpermitted regrading for the 8-foot wall after EPC visit.
So what happened there is Mr. Hammond had the EPC come out because there was a wall that was 8 feet high. There's no wall on the plan that says you're allowed to, that says there's an 8-foot wall. I guess Mr. Hammond was looking after the environmental protection of the site, which is a good thing. So the environmental protection officer came out, and I guess the guy said he didn't like it because it wasn't on the plan and it wasn't approved. So then Mr. Hammond said, regrade it, but you can't just regrade it without an amendment. So it's highly irregular to kind of say, hey, there's a 33% higher wall here, just fix it by creating another illegal condition of regrading higher.
Got it.
And then, you know, I think if you look out throughout the theme here, there's a clear theme that every decision is in the favor of the builder. There's no decision in favor of the neighbor or the community. It's all in favor of the builder.
Okay.
What kind of wall is this? Like loose stone or?
It's a stone wall.
Yeah.
But like, is there
Dry.
there's not masonry inside the rocks?
There's slight masonry, but it's like a dry wall, so there's a little bit of masonry. So for this last one, like the picture you're looking at, when it was built, the wall was 5.7 feet high, and then they raised the elevation 2.3 feet, did the survey, the as-built survey, said, oh, the wall's only 3 feet. The surveyor left, they dropped the wall back down another 1.7 feet, and then took that picture and said, oh, look, it's not that bad. So, I mean, so the conclusion here is...
So, hold on. So you're saying that the survey, so you're saying that while the survey says, I don't know, whatever the number is in the box over here, it's actually 2 foot lower because they cut it down after the survey?
No, they didn't cut anything. So,
Not the wall, they
The
cut the
grading,
grade down
grading.
after the survey.
so the survey, I mean, the wall was 5 feet, 5.7 feet. They raised the bottom grade, because the definition of a wall in area and zoning regulations is bottom grade. They raised the bottom grade.
Did the survey.
2.3 feet, did the survey, and then dropped it
And then
back
they
down.
cut it down again so that we're saying the same thing.
And then the bottom, like when they raised it, it created a 50% drop. So the as-built approval was for a 50% grade into the easement area, which obviously was not considered as part of the stormwater 854, all that kind of stuff.
Okay,
So that's it. If you go back to the beginning, I mean, that's it for 1 through 4. I have number 5,
okay.
which is a doozy, but let's go back to 1 through 4. So the requested relief is pursuant to 1101A. You have to confirm all the conditions that I just mentioned, and then the approval becomes invalid because it doesn't match the area and zoning regulations. The owner can either modify the wall to match the plan, or can find formal amendment with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then we'll get to number 5.
Okay.
Any questions?
I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Maybe. I mean,
Okay.
maybe we hear from Hervé and then we bring you back up.
All right, can we do number 5? Or
Yes.
do you want to do that later?
No, let's get it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I say let's do it.
All right, so this is one that you guys will love, I think. So there's a section in the Darien Zoning Commission, Darien Zoning Regulations, 850. You guys familiar with 850? 850 says you're not allowed to. It's basically a regulation to prevent raising and lowering the grade of the contours. So this is where Mr. Fullington, you earlier said that a private project can have less than 20 cubic yards of filler excavation or regrading, or 6 inches in height. But if you're building a new construction, that's raised from 20 to 50 cubic yards, and there's no height limit if it's within 20 feet of the construction area. 25 feet, he's correct. So what Mr. Haman did was he said, that's great, I'm going to interpret this as net. So he changed 3,475 cubic yards. So picture 50 cubic yards, which is allowed, 3,475 cubic yards was actually done. The justification for this was that I lowered the property by 1,400 yards, and I raised, or by 1,800 yards, and then I raised the property by 1,800 yards. So really, the overall grade difference is only 15 cubic yards, which is completely incorrect. So if you read the definitions of what excavation, fill, and grading is, it clearly states that it's any combination of those. So essentially, instead of 15 cubic yards, they regraded 30, is it in here somewhere? I can't remember.
And where did you come up with this definition?
It's from the Darien Zoning Regulations.
Okay.
It's mentioned in section 210. The second thing is the construction area. So the 25-foot limit is from the construction area, which is typically referred to as the envelope of the building. What Mr. Haman has said is no, I'm not going to measure it from the envelope of the building. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure it from the accessory structure, which is the pool, and that's not allowed. And you can read the definition of what new start of construction is, which kind of gives you an example of how it's defined in the Darien Zoning Regulations. And the reason for this, and the reason for both of these, is that if either one of these definitions is true, you can throw out section 850. It is irrelevant, because that means I can redevelop the whole lot, raise and lower elevations, and as long as they equal out, I'm fine. So, and then the second one is I would just put an air conditioner wherever I wanted to regrade, and then measure 25 feet and be like, hey, it's good. So it doesn't make any sense. And there's no legal basis for it either. There's zero legal basis for it. I think I'd be interested to see what Bob Maslin has to say about it as well. And then the last thing is in 851, it clearly states that staff may approve up to 50 cubic yards or 8-inch threshold in elevation. Obviously, 8 feet, 8 inches, very different. 50 cubic yards, 3,775 cubic yards.
Big difference. Got it.
So the remedy, the third thing is sufficient information. So information was withheld throughout this process. I asked since July, hey, Mr. Haman, what's your justification for approving it without a Section 850 permit? He would not give it to me. Mr. Director Ginsburg would not give it to me. So that's a violation as well. And then the last is within 15 feet. And Mr. Fullington, I think you had a question around that before too. And it's the most restrictive interpretation that matters. So if you're saying the 15 feet doesn't apply to the 20 cubic yards or the 50 cubic yards, then you're also saying the 50-foot environmental protection upland review area doesn't matter, because that's in the same regulation under a different point.
Okay.
But your point on the cubic yard is that they should have gotten a special permit?
They should have gotten a special permit. So 50 cubic yards,
I understand that.
But your ask,
3,700.
but your ask is not that they go back and get that, you just want the wall built per their approved plans. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, because, so now we're going to get into some of the things that we've already discussed this evening, which is the only thing I can appeal is the as-built.
What was issued? What was granted?
The as-built conditions, because that's within 30 days. So that's the only thing I can ask you to reverse. This one, the reason why it's a doozy is because this is really hard to do, which is go back 9 months and say that permit was invalid to start. That's basically what we're saying. And when you say that permit was invalid to start, you're kind of saying that the law kind of applies to mandatory conditions that are violated. You might be able to do it with ab initio, right? Say, hey, that was never valid. But it has to be mandatory conditions, because if it's discretionary conditions, obviously you can appeal. But if it's just a blatant violation of the zoning laws, then you could say it's void from the start. So that's up to you guys. I think if you define these definitions and say, hey, this is what cubic yard calculation is, hey, this is what a construction area is, if you interpret those things in the adhering regulations, which are pretty easy to interpret because the definitions are clear, then I think the permit becomes invalid. There's nothing you need to do, because by law it's invalid, but you just need to affirm that these definitions are the actual definitions. And if that's the case, then my conditions are the same, except you can start putting, except the permit becomes invalid. So then what I'm asking you to do is separate, and I think this is what was suggested earlier, separate the building of the house, which is compliant, from the grading in the wall, which is incompliant. Allow Mr. Wilson to continue building his house, but make him reapply a special permit for the grading in the wall, and keep the same conditions that were already applied for. So I don't want to have to go through this whole thing again. If he doesn't do that within 30 days, he's got to tear it all down.
Okay.
Not the house, the wall. And then there's oversight safeguards for you guys to consider so that they actually do it, because the problem here is that the responsibility lies with Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hammond has clearly shown that he is not interested in applying the zoning regulations, so we need some...
Come on, I'm sorry, you can't say these things.
Hold it, you can't.
Perfect. You'll have a chance. Okay. Well, nothing defamatory. Come on. You had a good case.
Anyway,
Okay.
I didn't mean to say that. I'll take that back.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is there's a pattern here that we need some independent oversight for.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We may call you up again.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hammond?
I defer to Bob Maslin.
Mr. Maslin, on behalf of Hervey, thank you.
And I'll stop after.
How you doing over there? Okay.
Good evening again.
Good evening, Mr. Maslin.
Attorney
You
Robert
did a great job
Maslin.
on that other one.
Oh, thanks.
Kept it tight, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Attorney Robert Maslin, representing the owner of 45 Old Farm Road, which is Oliver Wilson Development, LLC, who's Oliver's back there with his hand up. Okay. I was going to start by saying we agree with everything Hervé said, but he hasn't said anything yet. A couple of things that I would note before we start. First, this appeal effectively shut this job down. The difference between this one and 72 Old Kings Highway South is Mr. Self was able to get his appeal in the time between Hervé's sign-off on 2 different as-bills, one for just the building foundation, the other for the foundation with the wall, and the issuance of a final zoning sign-off to go over to the building department. And under the appeal statute, although I don't believe it was designed for this type of situation, it was more for enforcement of violations, but under the statute, it stays everything until the ZBA makes a decision, which is a huge problem. And when I get into this, you'll see what little issue there is here, if any. First, Mr. Self said he didn't care about the house. It's compliant. So there's your bifurcation. We talked about that previously, but in addition, I've requested by letter of April 9th, it should be in the file, that Hervé make a finding that $250,000 worth of equipment and a whole bunch of construction machines creating safety and a hazard to people and to the building materials that are out in the weather. For some reason, that was denied. That's available in the statute, but it was denied. In the statute, 8-7, the stay applies, as I mentioned, if you don't have your building permit yet, okay? Unless the zoning enforcement officer makes a finding that there's imminent peril to person or property. So our argument was that there's a whole bunch of material out there out in the weather, unprotected, and a bunch of construction underway, and a bunch of machines with holes, access to the basement, et cetera. And we asked that that finding be made, but he said no. Now, we do have an initial approval. Keep in mind that no matter how you look at this, there was no public hearing and no application to the commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, required. It's a single-family residence, no activity within wetlands or regulated areas under the wetland regulations. No variance is required. Everything complied. With respect to the retaining walls, they support earth that is where components of the septic system and components of the drainage system are located. And under 850, that's exempt regardless how much fill there is. It's just plain exempt.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Under 850, Section 850, filling necessary for drainage systems and septic systems approved by staff are exempt entirely from Section 850. The 15 feet doesn't apply, the 20 cubic yards doesn't apply, it's just completely exempt.
So it's within Mr. Hammond's purview
Within Mr. Hammond's purview because he
to make
is
those
staff.
decisions.
He is
under
staff.
850. Yes?
Well, what is your evidence that the purpose of the entire excavation, fill, and regrading was just for drainage purposes?
Mr. Self's own submission. If you look here, here's your drainage system, this checkerboard looking thing, and the wall is right behind it, supporting the earth for that system. There's a component of it that runs down along the lower segment of the wall that heads toward the, this pink area. And if you look right behind it, there's a pipe, and that's part of the drainage system. And you need to have certain elevations in order for it to work by gravity.
Was there an engineering survey or something to go with
There's a,
this?
there's a whole thing.
Okay.
There's a site engineering report.
Okay.
It was reviewed by Joe Canis and approved.
Okay.
All of that was done. And while we're talking about approvals, Mr. Talamelli, working as the wetland staff person, reviewed all of this and made some little tweaks a little bit along the way here. This broken line here is your upland review area under the wetland regs. So he reviewed this and was satisfied that nothing needed a wetland permit. And he is the wetland enforcement guy with statutory authority to enforce the wetland regulations.
Okay, so,
This broken line,
yeah, no, I see that, but up here, north of where the drainage system is, where the pipe is not, there's no excavation, grading, fill that took
Up
place
here?
over here?
there is some, but there's a swimming pool. This is the outline of the swimming pool
Right.
here. That does have a separate building permit, and it's a structure. And so anything within 25 feet of that's exempt. And then the wall goes up and goes around, but Mr. Self is not concerned with that. He mentioned section 1029 and amendments. Section 1029 is in section 1020, which deals with business site plan review. Those are applications that go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and approval. It does not apply at all to amendments to a straightforward of right zoning permit, which is what we're dealing with here. Following up on
So
that,
the commission did not see.
commission
or
didn't see
approve
this,
site
so
plan.
1029 doesn't apply at all.
Because it's for commercial, not residential.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Another interesting point here that Mr. Self overlooks is this wall, in terms of the height, actually complies with the zoning regulations. And specifically, within the setback, and I mentioned this before, within the setback, 6 feet is your maximum. Outside the setback.
Well, as long as
but-
it's a side or rear yard and not a front yard.
Except for the front yard, yeah. There's no front yards here because it's one of those rear lots with a 40-foot setback all the way around. So what we're saying is that once you get beyond the setback, which in this diagram, everything from this broken line here, which is the setback line, up, is in the building envelope. It's way out of the 15-foot area. It's outside the 50-foot upland review area, and therefore, it can be any height up to whatever height you want, because it's up to 30 feet, because it's not in a setback. If it's in a setback, your maximum is 6 feet.
Wait, so none of this is in the setback? I thought
No,
all of
part
it
of
was
it
in-
is, part of it is.
Oh, okay.
This section here.
1B to 1D.
But when you look at this starts, and I'll run through some of these numbers to give you an idea of what we're really talking about.
Okay.
Down at the beginning, it doesn't seem to be an issue because he's only got one set of numbers. Top of wall, 32, bottom of wall, 30.6.
We're talking
1
like an
foot,
inch.
6 inches.
Okay,
1 foot, 0.6. It's
yeah.
a little more than that. And you go, and that is a single box. I think he means by that it's compliant with the original plans. Over here, he's got 1 foot, the difference between 31 and 30, top and bottom.
Mr. Self, I'm sorry,
This-
you can't, you'd have to come up and comment, but let's let Bob finish, and then you can address it.
This one here, which is the one just right above the setback line, top of wall 31, bottom of wall 28, 3 feet. Like that. Then he has this triple type of thing here, where the original, it says, is, the height is 6 feet, 26 bottom, 32 top. The as-built is actually 3.3 feet. Top 32, bottom 28.7. Which is actually almost a 3-foot reduction from.
Right, but he's saying that the top of wall is too high. You're picking the numbers of the difference between bottom of wall and top of wall.
Exactly,
But
but
he's saying the top of wall is too high.
that's not the way to measure it. The top of wall minus the bottom of wall gives you the wall height. And if you're allowed a 6-foot wall, 3.3 is well within that. In addition, that's an area that's right adjacent to the drainage system.
I know, but
So
he's
it's
saying
exempt.
that it's not per the plans.
It doesn't matter because it's allowed under the zoning regs.
So you're saying that if there's a plan that calls for your wall to be 3 foot tall, and you build a 5 foot, 11-inch wall, it's under 6 feet, so you're fine?
Correct. If it's, well, 5'11" anywhere on the property except the front setback, yes. That's what the zoning regulations provide.
But it still wouldn't match the drawings that were submitted and approved by the building department. How does that factor into that?
It doesn't, because you can make site adjustments, and as long as the site adjustments themselves comply with the zoning regs, it's allowed. You don't
I don't think that's
Look,
true.
You don't-
all this conversation about.
You don't need.
What is the point of us signing
What
off on
can-
plans if everybody can just run a road and do what they want? I
Can
don't get
someone
that.
just say, the
But that
wall
has
was
to-
supposed to be at elevation 32, whatever we're working off of, I don't know what the standard, and it's at 31.9 or 32 point, like, I don't, how
That doesn't-
far off is the wall? He's saying that it's, he's saying it's,
Oliver, do you want to come up?
Yeah,
If
please,
you-
someone talk to me.
Let me just make another example. You get a building permit, a zoning permit to build a single-family residence, the permits go in. If you decide you're gonna put an air conditioning unit on the site, if it complies with the setbacks and it doesn't put you over coverage,
I
that's
guess that is
allowed.
true.
You don't have to
It's
go
only
back
if
to
there's
the
a
zoning
variance. It's
commission
only if there's
and get an
if
amendment.
it's-
And it gets recorded on the as-built.
Got something?
Oliver Wilson. So I wanted my wall 32 feet all the way around, and Dave asked me to drop my garage 1 foot. Then he came back with a list of things, which is pretty much what's online here. He wanted me to give up an easement on the, I have an easement going onto his driveway. So it was kind of, without getting into it, I was going to do it. Then he wanted more and more. It's like, enough. I was with Landtech, good engineering company who I work for, that provided the site plan. We called Hervé, we had a 3-way conversation. I was in the middle of doing the wall, actually towards the end. I'm not talking to Dave Self anymore. Are you okay if I make the wall 32 all the way around? My site engineer said it's compliant, I'm not in the setback. You're entitled to do it as long as, like everything Bob just stated. So we did it, it was compliant.
Why did you decide to?
I didn't ever want it. I was kind of blackmailed into, like, why wouldn't you just do a wall level all the way around?
Right, but you acknowledge that you.
I was being
submitted
blackmailed
plans.
into dropping it. I did a number of steps. I spent money on an architect, an engineer. I appeased the neighbor as much as I could. I offered up plantings. You know, I couldn't get
And
anywhere.
what's the story with the part of the wall that was not supposed to be there and now is there?
I don't know which the one that is. There's
The
not this.
1A
It's
and
that
1B
small
or whatever.
section that
This
looks like
section
there's
here.
some drainage. It's for
Between
drainage.
1A and 1B, there's supposed to be wall theoretically, and there is none.
I have a site plan that shows that running parallel with his driveway further up as well. Like, there was multiple designs that we kept having to tweak. And that wall is, I've got a photo of it, it's 14 inches high. And we're still rough graded. It's gonna be less than a foot. Dave's driveway, if you go parallel with that point of contention where it's now 30, not 32, and you stand on his driveway, well, I have elevation shots, it's an 18-inch differential over 50 feet. And I offered to fill in that swale, that pizza slice, and plant evergreens for him. But I can't seem to get anywhere. So, like, yeah, what's the end goal? And for me, the evergreens would have solved it for him, but he won't let me plant them because he's got a fence. He won't let me take the fence down and plant them. But it's a good looking wall. It's 18 inches higher than his driveway that's 50 feet that way. So it's also, it's legal and it's compliant.
I see what you're saying, okay. You haven't done anything wrong.
It's compliant.
Okay.
And Hervé, I even went a step further and had a 3-way conversation with the engineer, with Hervé, to make sure it's compliant. And now here I am, you know, I'm $2.25 million into this, and I haven't been able to do anything. And the tariffs, I've got like 250 grand's worth of materials just sitting there.
Ugh, okay.
It's over 2 feet of a wall that's compliant. So, you know, this is not very logical.
So what do you think the solution is here? Just
I'm compliant, nothing.
nothing, okay?
I'm in good shape, and I was trying to help the neighbour, now I don't really want to.
Okay,
That's where I am.
yes,
And as long as I'm compliant, I don't see the problem.
okay. Hervé, you got anything to add to this?
No, I think
Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you.
While he's coming up,
Yeah,
a couple of things. One, there is no due process issue here at all. The term is fundamental fairness, and it only applies in applications that require public hearings. That's well-established Supreme Court.
and you're saying this does not require a public hearing because there was no,
It doesn't require a public hearing because it's a single-family residence where everything complies,
why are we here then?
because Mr. Self took an appeal.
Okay,
But there is no due process for a neighbor on an application that fully complies, and permit can be issued as of right. And an amendment to
That's
that,
assuming you're right about the not needing a special permit for the grading.
Well, we're making that point. The
Okay.
wall holds back, and the filling that's necessary for the drainage system and the septic system.
I
which is on
agree
this-
that if all of the excavation and grading was done because of the drainage system, then you would not need a special permit. I agree with that.
Correct.
I'm just unclear whether, in fact, it was all done for that reason, so.
Well,
It was
well, this
lit.
was,
No.
Can't
and
speak
it's
for him.
and what the key factor is, it's approved by staff.
Understood?
And the way it goes in Darien, Mr. Heyman is the zoning enforcement officer who signs the permit. But grading is typically reviewed by Jeremy Ginsberg, the director, and Fred Donite, who's his assistant. And most of the time, Mr. Talamelli gets involved because of his expertise in wetlands and drainage and flooding issues. So we're here. And Mr. Self is not aggrieved by the other part of the wall. So regardless, he's only complaining about the parts that are in his corner here where the drainage system is.
Understand.
All right?
Okay. Mr. Hammond?
All right. Good evening, Hervé Hammond, zoning enforcement officer. Thank you for listening to this very confusing presentation from Mr. Self. I do want to state for the record that I resent wholeheartedly a lot of the accusation about my professional review on this project. I have spent numerous hours reviewing this with engineers before the project was started, reviewing and actually influencing how lower the wall became, which we thought was fair. We found a good compromise in terms of what was needed for the drainage, what was needed for the site. I was presented with the document that, I'm sorry if I'm a little shaky here, but I was presented with this document from the engineer, which was talking about a net 15 cubic yard of cut and fill and cut. I had done my own quick analysis of how this site was going to be balanced, and I'm not an engineer. This is very much an architect's colorful, sketchy drawing, but that's the best I can do. And also highlighting what was at 25 feet from the structure, including the pool. And you can see that roughly, that's the reason for the wall, the location of the wall.
I don't understand what we're looking at, Hervé. I'm
We're
sorry.
looking
Is
at,
that
we're looking at the
wetlands?
diagram that shows where the 25 feet buffer around the construction allows the 50 cubic yard.
You get it?
And yeah, that's that part of the
Okay.
regrading.
If John gets it, we all get it.
That
Right,
was
John?
mine.
All right.
So,
Okay.
so to say that this was devoid of strong scrutiny and analysis is an absolute lie. There's absolutely no other word than that. I just need to state that. The complex and again confusing point analysis that was presented to you between point 1, point 2, point 3 until 6, I have on record 3 plans, and I apologize if point 1 doesn't match with the point 1 of the other plan, that doesn't match exactly with the first point 1 of the third plan, but these are roughly around the perimeter of what is in question, which is the retaining wall, right? So the origin, the corner point in between, I don't have point that matches. I didn't ask the engineer to create 6 points that match perfectly from one from the other. So of course there are discrepancies between them. 6 doesn't match 6 and 5 doesn't match. That doesn't make me less interested in getting this process thoroughly examined, right? The as-built, when it comes down to the as-built, I think it's very important to understand this. I received 2 as-built. The first one, which is here, sorry, not here, over there, was dated 2/27, so February 27, did not show the wall on it. I'm the one who requested to put the wall because it was always part of how we have studied the site. And so the second as-built shows this wall, and it was issued a week or 10 days later. Okay. Based on the foundation location of this building, it's a fully compliant as-built survey of the foundation of the structure. I only followed the advice of town council and everybody involved to respect Mr. Self's appeal and hold the permit for the dwelling and the framing back because there was an appeal. However, and because the wall has been on these approved plans from the start. However, I was presented an as-built survey with just the foundation of the structure, which is perfectly approvable as is. And we could have said, okay, your as-built is approved, ignore the appeal, you can continue building. Instead of that, in deference to the appeal, we held the process back. And now, as far as the imminent peril, I could not, and this is a discussion again, numerous hours with Jeremy and I and town council, defining a construction site to present imminent peril would be setting a precedent to every single construction site in town. If you don't have 2 guys working for 5 days, then you have created an imminent peril on a construction site. So to me, imminent peril is if you have a wall ready to fall. There is no wall ready to fall. Yes, there's material
Now,
stored.
this seems
Yes.
egregious to me, that
Yes.
Oliver would be held up, his crew,
Well, no,
his
but
equipment, I understand, there's
But
no safety
I
issue
could
here.
not, I
There's no-
I did not lift the period of stay because of the definition of imminent peril.
I agree.
So that's where
I get
I
it.
stood. I stood for that. But I think that in my material that I gave you, I think in this case, we really have to separate whatever requests are having to do with the wall and the wall height.
I understand.
And let the construction continue so that this construction can.
Well, Mr. Self doesn't seem to have an issue with that.
That's right, and I'm glad
That's great.
about that. Now, if we talk about the wall itself, there are some attenuating circumstances for where the wall is built and which height. It's up to you guys to decide what you think.
What's your, put aside Bob's argument that he can build it up to as tall as he wants as long as he's under 6 feet. How far off is the wall?
So in the
How
middle,
much
I think in
taller
the middle where it's 8 feet, it should have been 6. And there's an area which is really 2 foot too tall where the wetlands are. But however, per zoning, that 8 foot is not a problem. It's way inside the buildable area. It could be 30 feet. I mean, it doesn't have to be, exactly the 6 feet that was approved. There are some construction conditions and, if it's cleaner.
Oliver, you have to come up if you want to say something.
So, I mean, does that answer your question? If it's along, so we have a.
Yeah, I'd love to see an as-built survey in the design document
Right,
next to
and
each
again,
other, so I
it's
can
the
actually
same
look
thing-
at it, but I
Same
guess
thing with
that's
the
not.
wall. It's the same thing as 72 Old Kings Highway. The site is not finished. The pool is not even in place. It's
I
not dug
understand,
in.
I understand
So to create
understand all
an
that,
as-built
but still,
survey
the
of
top
the
of the
wall-
wall is installed,
Can I
right? You could put
Yeah.
on top of it, and you could say, I don't know what is used out here, NAV D88, whatever it is,
can I-
it's at 32 feet.
Can I simplify?
Yes,
if you look-
please.
Can I point to it?
Yes.
So, everywhere it's 32. And
Okay.
that's it. After some influence from the neighbour, this dropped to 30.
So it was
So it
built
goes
to 32 and then you dropped it back down? for
No,
him?
I haven't dropped it back down.
Okay.
In the design, right?
He wanted me to drop it to 30.
Okay.
I've basically gone from 32, continued to 32 instead of 30,
Okay.
and I've held 32 instead of 31.
Okay, so here it's about
I'm 2 feet higher than
2
what
feet.
was
Okay. Thank you.
just in this corner, and then it washes out to 32, and it washes out to 31.
Okay.
So literally you've got...
And
the
that
outside
corner
coming
is-
down 2 feet.
That wall does
And
not
it's 5
require a
feet,
variance.
and it doesn't require a variance.
The neighbor that's behind, that's the most impacted, has that neighbor said anything to you guys?
I told him I'll put a lot of evergreens in, and he was happy.
His yard was destroyed and he said nothing. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to be heard on this? Not you, not you. Hold on. Okay. Well, I'll come back to you. Okay, that's interesting.
So for me, the only point of contention is it was approved at 30, which I didn't want at the beginning.
Right.
It was just bullied from the neighbour. And then when my deal fell apart with my neighbour for the easement, I wanted to put it at 30. I went to my engineer's office, we called Hervé, and established that I'm well within my rights to do it. But instead of just going ahead bullish in doing it, I got on the phone. But here we are.
Okay.
So I don't think I could have done it any other way that wasn't respectful of planning and zoning.
Sounds good, I think, yeah.
So I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So Hervé,
Thank you.
the plans showed the wall being lower than it was. If the applicant had come to you, he starts his work and then he comes, he goes, you know what, I want to do it to 32 feet. I presume the town could have approved that by its own admonition. It wouldn't have to go to anybody. It's within their full discretion to do so.
Correct.
Right.
As long as the amount of regrading that it represents does not suddenly become, a problem.
Right, that was gonna be my next question. So on the regrading, what's your view on the position that was articulated that this regrading was all done for the purpose of drainage?
I think it was largely done for the purpose of grading, and it was also within the 25 feet of
That's my
outside the
next question.
structure.
So your view is largely but not entirely done for
Not
drainage?
entirely, no. I mean,
And,
it's
but-
a site condition, so
Right, but is it accurate to say that all regrading activities involved area within 25-foot perimeter of the construction?
I think that's pushing it a little bit. I think there were some parts that just stick out a little bit more than 25 feet away. I mean, I'm sure Woody gave you a diagram that shows where there are some areas which have moved a bit, but it's not a significant. The biggest part of the regrading is within 25 feet of the house and the pool.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like, I don't know, 80%. I would try to put a figure on it. I'm sure there are some that escaped a little bit.
Mr. Self, do you want to come back up?
Yes, I do, please.
Okay. Thank you, Hervé. Stand
I
by.
have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Do you want first, Hervé? Go ahead.
So for,
Hold up.
in just the normal course for building, if you're building a single-family home and you have a basement, right? You're going to excavate.
Yes.
Would you typically, with a single-family home, have a special permit for regrading?
No.
To, just for the purpose of filling back in?
No.
No.
We have a foundation, the way we handle it, we have a foundation permit, which is validated and includes the entire site for drainage.
Okay.
The drainage material, the civil engineer drawings that show the grade that will be achieved, the foundation location, and how everything will be done is treated separately. And it goes to our peer review civil engineer. When he says it's good, I look at all the zoning portion, which is, setbacks, height, blah, 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 and then it proceeds. And then what happens at the end of the foundation, before the builder can do the dwelling and framing permit, we do a re-review. We look at it again with everything in it, and we say, okay, well, everything was done according to what was in the approved foundation plan for that house, including that basement. And then we just proceed for the second permit, which is the dwelling permit. And the same thing for the pool. We just separate permit for the pool. We look at the excavation. Usually pools are, they have their own track.
So for purposes of the normal course, grading would be, or fill would be considered on a net basis, not a gross basis. Is
So
that?
to me, it's always been looking at it net.
Okay.
So what do you have at the end of the day after you can't, if you say you're creating a basement, to your point, you're creating a basement, you're probably going to excavate at least 20 cubic yard or 50 cubic yard of dirt. But then by the end of the day, you're putting a foundation and you're filling it around, you would never be able to do any basement, right? I mean, without a special permit. We don't do special permits for basement, just.
So, but last question, Herb. So there were two separate approvals you granted, one for just the wall and a separate one for the building itself?
I did not. I looked at, it's the same kind of question as the 72 Old Kings Highway. The wall being part of the way the drainage worked for this house was approved as part of the foundation permit.
Right, so you approved one foundation/wall
Correct.
permit?
Yeah.
And that's what's being
Yeah.
appealed?
The first one was for reason of safety. This one is for reason of drainage and overall structure location.
Okay.
Yeah. That all right? Good?
Good, thank you. Mr. Self? It's 10 o'clock. We can keep it kind of tight. I
How long should
appreciate
I
it.
talk for? 30, 40, 50 minutes? 60?
Seconds.
So a permit, I mean, it's not sufficient that the as-built condition might independently comply with the general zoning parameters. The permit is not a blanket authorization for all compliant outcomes, because that would defeat the purpose of everything we do here, everything you wonderful people do here. Because if like, you have to ask yourselves, why do you publish it in the paper? It's so that people can comment on it, and that's the due process that exists. So if you publish, I'm not gonna create a retaining wall, and then you go create a retaining wall, obviously, there's no point to the whole process, right? Because you will just publish, I'm not building anything, and then build whatever you want.
Yeah, and your position is complete opposite of Bob's, right? Bob's saying, I can build up to this height because that's what's allowed in the setback, and you're saying you can't deviate whatsoever at all from what the approved
You
drawings.
can within the regulations. So if you read the first paragraph of the regulations, it says, if there's any doubt in these regulations, the strictest standards apply. It's not the loosest standards, and I think that's what these folks are saying. They're saying, hey, the loosest standards apply, but if you read the first 3 sentences of the regulations, it says the strictest standards apply. So you have to approach it from that angle. The second thing is, they're absolutely right. I agree with them. They can build a wall outside of the setbacks, and I had searched the regulations, and I can't find anything that limits the wall height. So at some point, like, you're allowed to build a 6-foot wall within the required setback, but if it goes beyond the required setback, there's no regulation that limits the wall, so it becomes a structure. So then you have to decide at what point does a wall become a structure and be limited. So that's fine. They can build as high a wall as they like, but the wall in itself, like, let's just take it as an example. They're allowed to build this 6-foot wall. So Mr. Wilson has built a 6-foot wall. There's no grading allowed behind that wall because of 850, right? So he can have a 6-foot wall on his side, and I can have a 6-foot wall on my side, and that's fine with me. If he wants to lower the grade behind the wall and have a 6-foot wall, I love the privacy. The problem with the retaining wall and elevations is that if I build a 6-foot wall, which is this high, and there's a car here, right? Like, picture you being in your front yard and having a car up here. That is not in compliance with 854, which says it has to be in line with the neighborhood. It has to be, in line with neighbor conditions. So throwing out the fact that the permit was approved and that statutory window has come and gone, that's for 30. The statute for 850 still applies. It's not just because they circumvented that statute for the first 30 feet that they can then say, oh, I can just raise it another 2 feet and ignore that statute again. Because then, I could just say, look, I'm going to do it incrementally. I'm going to say I'm going to build a foot and then add a foot and then say I'm going to build 2 feet and then add 2 feet.
So your ultimate issue is you give somebody an inch, they take a mile. I'm trying to interpret where you're going with this. You don't like that, like this slippage almost is what's so kind of irritating. That like.
No, I mean, I think people say, oh, it's only 2 feet.
But it's
you're talking
more than
about
that.
elevation, right?
Yeah.
You're not talking about a wall. It's not about a wall. They can build whatever wall they like.
Yeah.
Up to 6 feet, right?
Right.
Along a neighbor property. But
I mean,
they can have a retaining wall as high as they like because that requires elevation change. So let's just say it was a hill and they chopped it off, it would be fine.
Like a 5-mile river.
But yeah, there's a 5-mile river, and the amendments that happened there's I can't remember the thing, it's 106 or something. But there is a site there that had to go through exactly the same thing. They built the wall, I think, 6 inches higher than they said they were going to build it. They had to send a letter and get written approval to say, hey, I built the wall higher than I should have. And 6 inches with a 6-foot wall obviously was approved, and nobody appealed that. But this is not about a 2-foot variance. This is about an elevation change of 6 feet. As a neighbor, we went through the pre-approval process. We negotiated. I said, I don't want a 6-foot wall next to my easement. Oliver agreed to a 30-foot elevation. I said, fine, if you build a 30-foot elevation, I'm not going to appeal. Right? I'm not going to appeal and force you to go through the 850 because that's agreeable to me.
Why do you think Oliver built it at 32 then?
Because he came up here and testified that he wanted to.
But do you think he was trying to compromise and please the neighbors?
I am the neighbor.
You're one of the neighbors.
There's no other neighbor that is affected by this. if you look at the approved site plan, the wall starts at grade, so like the approved site plan like starts at grade, and because there is a slope, there's an 11-foot drop on the site, 11 feet, think about that. So you think about you bought a plot of land that has an 11-foot drop, and you say, I want to build a flat lot. So what did he do? He like lowered this and raised this, which creates an 8-foot, I mean, you should come out and look at it.
I did.
It's
I got
8
a,
feet.
yep.
So go stand on top of it, like, it's a huge wall. Every single person that looks at it goes, there's no way in hell that doesn't require an 850. There's no way. Because if it didn't, like, you can just build whatever you want in this town. So,
What's your view on their position that this was done entirely for drainage, so it's exempt from 850?
so again, you'd have to read the regulations.
I did.
It says necessary for drainage. So again, there's an exemption for new construction.
Mhm.
New construction is not necessary drainage, right? Because you can build the drainage in an appropriate way. So I don't think the intent of the regulations is to say, if you build new construction and you want to put a 6-foot tank somewhere, then you can dismiss all the other regulations. So it doesn't say you can bypass 854 or anything else. I think the intent of those regulations are, hey, I have a house, like my house, that's super old, 1911. There's like a neighbor who builds a huge wall or something and like starts flooding my front yard. It would be unreasonable for me to have to jump through a bunch of hoops to try to solve that problem. So I could install a tank.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it doesn't say for new construction. It just says storm drainage systems generally.
Necessary.
Yeah, it says, yeah, right. It says necessary excavation incidental to storm drainage systems.
Okay, flip it around. If he hadn't built a retaining wall, there would be no requirement for the storage tank.
I'm not
I don't
sure
know
that's
about
right.
that.
But,
Yeah.
Well,
and then,
think about it,
but,
like the natural contour of the land would be the drainage system. There was a house there before, there was no drainage system.
well, just because there was none there doesn't mean that it wasn't needed or wouldn't be
Okay.
helpful. But the second question is, what's your view on their point that it's within 25 feet of the construction
It's not.
area?
And I mean, you can draw it the way Mr. Hamon did, and it's not. And you can draw it the way that the regulations state, and it's definitely not. Any which way you look at it, it's not. So I think the 854 applies too, the 15 feet, like if you want to look at that. The evaluation of the storm, like, you know, engineer approval. Like the whole point of a plan and getting engineer approval is you say, this is what I'm gonna build. Make sure the stormwater matches it. Make sure this matches it. And then if you go build something else, you have to do that whole process again. You can't just say, oh, I changed it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on this? Any counter arguments? Survey, one,
quick
yes?
one is I believe that within the 15 feet along the edge of the driveway,
Yes.
there's a lot less than 20 cubic yard of displacement. That will, as Mr. Wilson stated, the walls start at barely 14 inches.
Right.
And goes up to 3 feet. Within that first 15 feet, there is not 20 cubic yards of dirt. So just
So less
just
than
that
20
portion,
cubic
if you
yards,
take it in
yeah.
isolation, that portion is not worthy
So it
of
doesn't apply.
regrading special permit.
Okay.
It's the one along the driveway.
Can I say something about that?
Last comment.
Last comment.
Last
If I
comment.
take the whole plot and I divide it into 20 section squares, and I say, well, this square is compliant with 20 yards, and this square is compliant with 20 yards.
If you add them all up,
If you add them all up, you get 3,775 cubic yards of steel.
okay, got it, guys, got it. Okay, anything else from you guys? Bob, quick, please, Bob.
If you've been to the site, you
I have been there.
have seen that where the proposed driveway is under construction is very close to the driveway elevation going to the 45 rear. So there's not a whole lot of change that Mr. Silva's talking about where the cars pull up to go into the garage. The grade right there is at the elevation of, pretty close to the elevation of
Yeah.
the driveway. So it's not like you got 6 feet of fill looking down at his
Yeah,
property.
no, I
That's
recall it
just
being
not-
pretty level, yeah.
Yes, that's the point I wanted to make.
Okay,
'Cause he
thank you.
he seemed to make a
No,
point.
guys, I gotta wrap this up. I gotta
One
wrap it
more,
up.
2 seconds. On that point, for
Yes.
rebuttal,
Okay,
The zoning regulations
Can you hear it?
don't care, that's what the planning and zoning commission is for,
Okay.
to have that debate between neighbors.
got it. It is, and I think we have done that well tonight. I think we've heard from the neighbors. Thank you all. Okay, I'm really, really pleased that all of you stuck around. It's 10:15. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna close this. I don't know how far we're gonna get with deliberations, but I wanna just,
Is there anything that you don't have that you
I
think you
think
should
there's,
have?
I don't know.
We don't know what we don't know.
So
What
there-
do you mean by
So
that? What do you-
to properly deliberate, do we have any,
Right, is there
yes, I think we'll get into that in a minute.
Information like the top of the wall, all the way
Well,
across.
once we start
other
talking
things.
through it,
Yeah.
can we make a request for
Yes.
more information? Once it's in deliberations, we
Now,
can't
if you
make a.
close it, I mean,
No, not if you close the hearing. If you keep the
So we
hearing
can
open.
continue, like, for example, like, do we want a topo of the 72 Old Kings Highway? Do we want any other information for that one to make a decision?
We've already closed.
We haven't, well, no, we
We closed.
Oh, we closed it?
This is just.
No. You talked about closing it, but I don't think you declared it is closed. So,
do we want any other information for that one? I don't know if we're ready to like deliberate fully on these tonight, but like, I think we might want to get some legal counsel, but I'm waiting on you on that one.
no, it's up to you guys.
I think I have enough information to go in and deliberate, I just don't know if we're gonna get through all of them.
And can't we push it to next week?
I don't know.
Deliberations?
I lose Kevin.
No, I'm good for next Monday. I'm saying later in May.
Yeah.
Will be difficult.
May
So you're saying that
May
if we,
21st.
if we close this portion of the meeting where there's no more public comment, and we are talking and we come up with something that we want,
We can't go
there's
get
no
it.
way for us to obtain that document?
Right,
What about what about town council?
can't do that either.
We can't just make a request as part of deliberations, they need this document?
well, you wouldn't be able to get, for instance, an interpretation of like 854 and exactly what it means in the 15 feet, other stuff that might be relevant to your
We
judgment.
wouldn't be able to get?
We'd have to continue this hearing and
Not
then
as
like,
testimony, no.
do we have enough
We
information?
could
to-
certainly say we're going to include section 850 in the record of this hearing, and all the words that are in it.
So we're basically saying
That
we can't get any more outside
Correct,
information.
Even like our own council?
correct.
That gets to be great. That gets to be great. The smart thing may be to just essentially continue it to the May 21st. And then you can have a chance
That
to
doesn't.
consider.
I would recommend we close out 45 Old Farm and, well, that's not good, I don't know about that.
We already closed 72 Old Kings Highway. So,
Oh, God.
it's tough if you want to
I
add more
want to try to figure out a way to get that house built again.
I know.
At least 72 Old Kings is that his house is being built, right? Well, this is.
Right,
I mean,
I don't think you want to be drawn into that question as to whether to release the rest of the building permit. I think that's up to town council and the CEO and whoever else. Shouldn't be your judgment.
Are you
Really?
saying it is not that's not something that we can?
I don't think you should be opining that you should release the building permit for the rest of the house, under the circumstances.
oh, really? Okay. Okay, so here's what I think we should do. Let's solve Sedgwick. Let's talk about Sedgwick, so Amy Zavatakis can get out of here.
Okay. For 45 Old Farm, do you want
You
to
have to
close the
decide.
hearing? or-
Well, yeah, we still gotta decide what to do there.
Well, we have to
I'm
decide.
a little surprised to hear that if we close a hearing, we can then basically not.
We have to continue it if we want to get additional counsel on it.
Additional
And we did-
information. at least.
And we
Additional
did- we did-
information and I mean,
we didn't-
there's an argument being made here that as long as your wall is 1 inch below the requirement, you can just do whatever you want to do. Like, I don't know if that, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know that.
I mean, you could technically make the argument every time we deliberate, we could use extra information.
Different. It's-
This one's a little different.
What do you think, Jana?
Well, I guess my first question is, so if we closed 72, then we closed it, so I guess we could go ahead and deliberate on that. We closed 41, so we could go ahead and deliberate on that.
Mhm.
I think what I'm hearing is the only question is whether we continue 45, because we have questions about whether we need.
Well, but I think we can continue, from what I understand, we can close out, we can continue the building permit on the main structure for 45. No one had an issue with that. The only issue is the wall.
But it's, can you bifurcate it? I think that's a legal question.
I don't think the ZBA should be opining, saying, go ahead, ZEO, issue the rest of the
All right,
45 Old Farm
I guess
building
you're right, it's a
permit.
P and Z decision. Kevin?
Well, it's town council.
Yeah, I mean, without town council, I don't think we can take the position that we can grant the appeal in part and deny in part, basically saying
So it's
part of
not our
what Hervé
jurisdiction.
did was right,
Okay.
part of what he did was right. I mean,
All right.
I don't know if it is, I don't know if we have the authority to say he granted the as-built approval on these plans, and he was right for part of the plans and wrong for part of the part. I don't know if we have the authority to do that. That's the one thing that would be helpful to know from town council, but
They're not here.
yeah, so today, I don't think we can grant in part and deny in part, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Is it possible to add this to next Monday?
Yeah, can we quickly
Well,
get
are
this
we
thing
gonna-
moving?
Are we gonna get advice from town council by Monday?
We'll have to. Yeah, I'll call Patty tomorrow. I mean, can we? Woody, what does that
Difficult to
look? What do we
have-
do?
We have 4 other applications next week, too.
Okay. We want to get some resolution and get that moving as much as we can. So what do we do? You're saying it's not ours to make a decision on. We cannot bifurcate the issues. So we're gonna have to punt it.
Well, no, I'm just saying, you don't want to essentially order the issuance of the construction permit for the rest of the house at 45 Old Farm. That's all.
I'm kind of paralyzed here. I don't know what we can decide on.
Well, you still have all the issues that have been raised about the regrading and should it have gone to the P and Z Commission and changes that were made and allegations of, hey, the plans don't match the as-built. I think you can certainly separate.
Okay,
those
I think we
issues.
close the hearing and no, we don't close the hearing. We get legal counsel.
I'm fine closing, and I mean, I know where I'm headed, but I don't know if you guys need additional.
If you know where you're headed, then I'm comfortable
No, I mean-
following your lead.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's fine.
I know where I'm heading. You guys close enough?
Yep.
Okay, I'm closing the hearing.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start with Sedgwick.
I'll go first. So Sedgwick clearly has a hardship. The buildable area is very small. It's an undersized lot. What they are proposing, which is a 2,900 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath, is the minimum adjustment necessary to ensure they have substantial justice in the use of their land. So I would suggest that we approve it. If anybody has any more comments or motion?
Anybody else?
You're okay with the
I
equipment?
think the equipment, I would say I'm okay with the variance for the equipment on the west side because there was a good explanation given for there are no other acceptable locations for the equipment given the hardships on the lot. So I would make a motion to approve.
Yeah, and just add to, for the record, that they are substantially reducing the nonconformity that currently exists.
And the lot, the hardship is the undersized lot. Okay?
I second Janice's motion.
All in favor?
Wow.
Whoa, what?
Sorry.
What about what is the sidewalk at the front? Is that part of the plans? Does
It
that need a
was.
stipulation?
Yeah, it was previously a significant part of the approval.
Well, but is
Well,
it part of their, don't
Is
part of
it
their
part
plans
of their
show?
plans? If their plans that we're approving show it being moved back into whatever the town wants, then fine, but I just wanna make sure,
I
I mean,
think-
we're getting burned left and right on plans being wrong and getting approved, like.
John's right.
But is it not accurate that the plans show removing any encroachments into the town property?
Yeah, I think it does.
So the only thing they don't
So-
show is a new sidewalk being built by them, because you have to go with.
Because it's
both of the
controlled
town.
by this
town
town,
is
so
doing
it's
it.
state.
Yeah.
And who's going to build it, I guess.
So do we need to
was-
stipulate that then?
No, because the town is responsible for it.
It's out of our control.
Yeah. I don't think that requires a stipulation.
I think you might want to have a stipulation that the sidewalk encroachment has to be resolved to the satisfaction of the Public Works Office. Something as simple as that.
Which they agreed to do.
Okay, so put that in there.
It's not clear to me that it's coming out on this drawing. Let's
Yeah,
just
it's
put
a
it
little-
in just in
it's-
case.
It's a little shaky.
We've gotten like.
Okay, you got the language on that?
So Jana made the motion.
Jana made the motion, Kevin seconds. All in favor with the stipulation that the sidewalk be,
All encroachments be removed from the sidewalk, and the
Yeah.
plans for the sidewalk be coordinated with the town public works office to their
Encroachments
satisfaction.
removed prior to?
Prior
the
to what?
building
of
permit being
construction
issued, CO being issued?
Well, I don't know if they can.
We
do
can't call the
any work.
timing on it. We can't
We
call the
can't do
timing.
work.
So my issue with that would be is then if they're gonna rely on the town to do it, and the town takes forever to do it, just, can we make it as an item for CO or something like that? I don't know if that's our jurisdiction, but.
Yeah, the
I don't wanna,
town-
I don't want
you
his
could- no, no.
construction to get held up
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the town takes forever to restore a sidewalk.
No, I think they're gonna have to redo it. They just have to go to the town and submit plans and get approval from the town to do it, because sometimes it requires you also repaving the street and doing some other stuff.
If they gotta do the curb or whatever.
By the way, this has been a normal process when we learn from surveys that there's encroachments or problems of sorts. Well, get them fixed.
I would be less concerned if we haven't had all these drawing snafus in the last
I agree
3
with you.
months. It's,
We're good? Okay, so all in favor?
Okay.
5-0? Good, Amy. Okay, let's back in, let's start with Old Farm, since we just came off of that. Kevin?
No, I think someone else go first.
I'm afraid to go
Start
first.
with the farm.
I guess what I want to say is I'm not sure what the big deal is. And I was really listening. I think the big deal is that there's a constant issue with what the plans say and what actually happens. And what was the reason behind the change in the plans, right? Am I kind of onto something? Is that really what went on here?
I think the deviation from the plans on this one is much less egregious than 72.
Is it justified?
We've got 2 feet, but what's confusing to me is this point, I'm interested, Kevin, what you think about this, is that regardless of what's on an approved building department drawing or plan, as long as that wall's under 6 foot, you can build it as high as you want. Like, I don't think that's true.
Well, it's certainly the case that you can build a wall up to 6 feet within the setback. And outside of the setback, you can build it almost as high as you want, as long as it's conforming. But that's different than the question of if plans are approved, can you build something that's contrary to those plans, even dramatically different?
Right.
And I'm not sure, what.
This one doesn't seem dramatically different to me.
Yeah, I'm just saying in the hypothetical situation, and it seems to me our zoning text and building code has insufficient guidelines around what happens in those situations and what the recourse is and what the remedies are and what you have to do. And that's just something that worked on. But in this instance, it seems to me, just on this specific point, not about the grading issue, that these plans were administratively approved. They didn't require to go to the commission or anybody. And before doing this, and they went back to the town to get approval of what they built, and administratively, the town could have allowed for the higher wall, and that's in essence what they've done. So like, I'm not sure in this situation if it's that big a deal, just on the approval of one size wall versus another when it was all administratively approved anyway and could be.
I mean, I agree that the as-built didn't match the plans, yes.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I think he did have the authority to sign off on it.
Sorry, Barb.
With his
What do
email.
what do we think about the comment that any change needs to go back?
Not in this case. This is a wall. This is not a structural issue. The ZEO has to have some authority in the field to make these decisions.
Yeah, look, I agree, right?
I was
mean,
listening
We can't
to-
have homeowners coming back for every little minor,
No.
minor. Again, it's not definitive, not a definitive definition, but we can't be coming back for every deviation.
The only
as-
thing I
from a
question here was,
plan.
was this a condition where there was a special permit? And if there was,
Yeah, I mean,
then
that's
the
my
case.
issue, right? I think it's without question, there was a substantial amount of excavation,
Yes.
filling, regrading.
And he's right.
It is no doubt, though, that Section 851 first provides an exception to having, well, 850 says you have to get a special permit if you're doing any regrading. And then there's a bunch of exceptions to it. Exception 1 is if the regrading, filling, excavation, removal, it's exempt. If it's necessary excavation, filling, and grading incidental to storm drainage system, among other things, including dry wells. So question 1 is, does that exemption apply? And it would, except for there is testimony, including from the homeowner, that it wasn't entirely done, oh, I guess it was from Herv, that it wasn't entirely done for drainage. There were other reasons. It was primarily done for drainage, but not entirely. So therefore, that exception doesn't apply to the whole scope of it. And then there's a second exemption later down, which says what is exempt is any activities that do not involve areas beyond 25 feet of the perimeter of the construction. And it says do not involve any areas beyond 25 feet of the perimeter of the construction. And the homeowner testified that there were some areas, or Bob did, that were beyond 25 feet. Some of it was beyond that 25 feet. So that exception doesn't apply because some areas were. And it says or, not and, or it involved 50 cubic yards of material.
We never got a read on the amount. You're
Yeah,
guessing
but
it's-
I don't think you do the net. I disagree with that. What do you take out and you put back in and it's net. It is cumulative grading, but either way, it was beyond, there was some beyond 25 feet.
Okay.
And just thinking about it practically, this is the kind of thing that wants to go for a special permit, right? There was a substantial amount of regrading here done. Some of it was done for drainage, so that should be exempt. But a lot of it, in context with this wall, probably should have gone to the commission for a special permit, because that is sort of the intent of these regulations. If there's something big that is a lot of regrading, that is going to impact the neighbor, really it should be the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewing it and coming up with sort of a holistic plan. So that's my.
So if that's the case, then he has a legitimate appeal.
That's my view.
I think he's got him on that. I think he's got him on special permit. What do you guys think? I mean, I hate to hold up this whole thing on a technicality, but I think that's kind of where it is.
But I don't view it as a technicality. This is a substantial amount of regrading and work being done over there in connection with this wall, and the wall on its own would be fine, but in the context with all the other land filling and regrading.
Then what's the result of this gonna be? He's gonna have to take this wall down?
No. I mean, I think you gotta go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a special permit, and maybe they say that wall's fine and all this regrading is fine. I don't know.
I think that's the ruling. That's where I'm going with it. That's where I'm with you on it. I think that's the answer.
Okay.
Well, I mean, come on, and Woody, is this a 50-50 or a 2/3 vote on?
Well, it's still a 4 out of 5 in terms of.
So 4 out of
sustaining the
5 are
appeal,
required to sustain the appeal.
Right. And there's the other issue, which was the fact that they didn't get a building permit for the height of the wall. And we didn't focus much on that. I think we did with 72 Old Kings, but they're supposed to, when they're retaining more than 4 feet, get a building permit. So
I thought it was more than 3 feet, but that's either here nor there. It's about both.
I heard 3 feet over the years too, but it turns out I copied the reg for you.
Matt, what do you
Building
think?
code. So that could be another, just clean it up, go to the building permit, get whatever you need to
All right.
properly justify the wall.
But there was not a permit given for the foundation and wall together? That wasn't a building permit that was issued?
No, not for the retaining wall, it's a separate permit. It's supposed to be a separate permit.
On the other matter, there was testimony.
Wait, why does that one have to be a separate permit, but the other one was not?
I don't know.
The other one, on 72, the retaining wall was on the foundation drawings.
Okay, then what you could do is just say if there was not a proper building permit for either of these walls, that they have to obtain it. Shouldn't be hard.
I mean, that honestly wasn't raised at all in any of the, I didn't hear from anybody that, that the retaining wall, I mean, the
Needed a building
homeowner has
permit?
an item on here that says approved site plan, so there must be some drawing for this retaining wall, right?
Yeah.
There has to be.
Yeah.
So is the only action here, though, that, I mean, are we,
We're either upholding the appeal or we're denying the appeal.
right, but, and are we directing it to go back for a special permit?
No, I think that's not our business. We just.
So we're just
We're
saying-
making a determination, was the zoning enforcement officer incorrect in granting the
With,
approval for
with
the
no
as-built?
stipulations, no nothing, it's either
Correct,
yes or no?
Yes, this is
Is
not
that-
a stipulation
Yeah.
situation.
I'd like to say all kinds of things, but it's not our purview.
I guess I'm troubled by the gross versus net for the excavating and the fill. Because, Hervé did say that, you're not getting a special permit for every single house. And you've got to believe that, when you see the excavating going on for basements,
But that's not the case here. What Kevin's saying is there's substantial grading that went on here in addition to the.
But not outside of the 25 feet, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not sure, right, that's,
Yeah.
right, I don't, not exactly sure the amount, like within the 25 feet is exempted, outside of the 25 feet.
If such activities do not involve any areas beyond
Yeah, John, what do you
25
think?
feet, or.
This wall is outside the 25 feet though, right?
Right, but the wall is, well, I don't know, but the wall is not the issue in my estimation.
Well, it's the
Just
fill
grade.
behind the
Yeah,
fill.
right, yeah, right.
But
Is it
isn't
like-
the neighbor, so, and help me with the legal aspect of this, isn't the neighbor's issue with the wall and the height of the wall?
Yeah.
Right, he says here, right, action is modify wall to match approved plan or file formal amendment with planning and zoning commission.
Well,
So-
the way that you get to the wall is by going through and requiring the special permit. It's the other way of getting back to the wall.
Is the fill right up to the top of the wall too? I mean, does that mean if you're lowering the wall, are you also lowering the grade as well?
Oh,
I mean, that's.
well,
The grade, I'm sure the grading is not done yet. I mean, maybe in
Well,
some
it's-
areas,
we-
some areas, maybe it's done.
pretty
but-
close.
The trees look like they're right there. Like, it looks like it's right up to the
Yeah,
top. of
they
the wall.
actually did fill in, it looks like it's topsoiled, and there's, like you said, trees.
Yeah.
So it's pretty close to the finished.
So you have to take down the wall and the earth behind it.
To lower some
the
fill
whole
behind
thing.
it too.
well, they might not make them do that.
Yeah, I doubt that's.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we punt it back to P and Z.
May accept
I guess, yeah,
activities do not
my
involve an area.
position is why are we deciding whether or not it needs fill or not?
We're
right?
not.
Just,
We're just saying,
Yeah, I think I'm where Kevin is. It's definitely beyond 25 feet.
My thoughts are, I mean, I feel like this would have been approved had they applied for the special permit, they would have gotten it anyway. Would you agree with that, Kevin? Or-
I don't, in this exact form, I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure.
Well,
Well, there would have been a public hearing.
that's what shows it.
yeah.
P and Z Commission would have had a public hearing, and then there would have been a chance for neighbor comment. And,
Yeah, you're circumventing, I think that's the thing, it's like we would be allowing, if we say that the special permit would have, that process should have happened, we would be circumventing it if we do anything other than deny.
But also the town, yeah, also, we as the town have approved drawings that, well, I don't know. That's this.
I mean, I think it's a tough case, obviously, but like, I'm leaning more towards where you were going originally, which was that it's 2 feet, 18 inches some places, it's not the whole section of the wall.
The wall looks great.
It looks good, too, like,
It looks
I'd
great.
rather have a flat wall than this jig-jagged wall that happens to match like the plan, so, I don't know, so I would be leaning on the other side of that, but, I might be the only one here.
Well, you're welcome to continue your deliberation to another night. If you really want to
But we
do that.
can't get any more information.
Right.
or
We
There's,
could
there's
just think
nothing
about it.
else that we can gain by, right?
By punting, we can't, yeah.
Think about it for another week.
Oh my God, it's 10:40. Okay,
Yeah, that's
All right, so I guess we're just gonna vote then, or?
I guess we vote.
Okay, I mean, so my position is that portions of the regrading were done for reasons other than the storm drainage system. And portions of the regrading are beyond the 25-foot perimeter of the construction. And as such, I think it really should have gone before the Planning and Zoning Commission to get a special permit. And so for that reason, I believe the as-built approval should not have been granted, and I vote in favor of the appeal.
I second.
So your motion is to sustain the appeal, I guess.
So 2 in
Well, I don't know if
favor.
anybody else wants to like discuss there, or just
Yeah.
we want to make a motion, I don't.
So that's 2 for sustaining the appeal. Anyone opposed? Matt?
Opposed, yeah.
Anyone else opposed? 3 opposed? What?
No, I
Wait.
would vote, right now.
So let's do it
Make a
formally.
motion.
If no one else wants to say anything, then I make a motion
Okay.
to grant the appeal.
I second that.
All in favor.
All in favor?
Favor.
4 in favor of granting the appeal, 1 opposed.
Yeah.
That's 4 to 1.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to 72 Old Kings Highway.
And by the way, I just want to say before we move on with that, I think it's important for the board to say on the record also that I believe, I don't know if you all, but speaking for all that, think that Hervé was doing what he thought was in the best
I agree.
interest for sure. And a level wall straight across does make more sense, but I just think the regrading is substantial enough that it needed a special.
I gotta say, Oliver did, I think, like, let's
Looks
get
great.
going here.
Yeah,
It's
I
great,
agree.
it's great what you did, let's get going already. Get this project done. It's bordering on the ridiculous. Okay. 72 Old Kings Highway. I don't know where to start with this one. John, you want to say something? Matt?
Um,
I think this is the same exact thing in my opinion.
same,
And it's more egregious. Much more egregious.
Recording's still going on.
I think it's the same thing. There's gotta be a substantial amount more than addition to that, but it should have gone for a special permit.
It should have had a special permit.
Yeah, and I would just add, there was a special permit years ago on this, which involved the same sort of general thing, which was regrading and putting in a wall, albeit in a different place. And so a new property owner comes in and they put a wall somewhere else that is going, either part and parcel of that wall will require substantial excavation, filling, regrading, whatever you want to say cumulatively, that I think will be well in excess of the 20 cubic yards. And this seems to me to be exactly the kind of thing that requires a special permit. And the mere fact that, oh, well, all we did was a wall and there's no fill right now as part of it, I don't think you can segment your project that way to
Agreed.
avoid, okay, well, now we need some fill, but the wall's already here. I think it's part and parcel of the same thing, and when the new owner came in and they wanted to do fill and regrading, and there was a approved special permit that they wanted to deviate from, they needed to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And the deviation was, I mean, it's substantial.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that has any bearing here, but it's just, it's not even
I don't know that you can say, because I think the special permit expired, but I think it's, that a new one would have been needed.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And for what it's worth, I do agree that the special permit does not go from homeowner to homeowner, right?
No.
I mean, but.
Well, I mean, I don't know, it may, depending on the timing, but I don't think that's really relevant. Well, it doesn't go from one to the other in terms of a requirement that you
Correct.
have to do it. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
But the record should exist. It should, the history should have been there. I feel like so much got dropped on this. I don't know how this project went on and on like it did. Bless you.
This is kind of like a I am shocked.
I
by
am
the
too.
level of deviation.
Me too.
Like, I mean, a foot or two on a wall over however long that was, the deviation on this retaining wall it's
Crazy.
it's surprising to me that's.
I mean, so I'm in support of upholding, how do I say it, Kevin? The appeal.
Kevin's good at these things.
I support the appeal.
Yeah, so you're making a motion to.
I am making a motion to support the appeal.
Sustain.
Sustain the
I
appeal?
guess we use that word.
Okay, I make a
Same
motion to
difference.
sustain the appeal.
I second it.
All in favor? 5-0. All right, that was a long, I don't think we've ever had a meeting that long. Okay, so it is.
We'll pass
we're-
on other business. till
Let's
next
pass on other
Yes,
business.
we will.
Let's, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn. It's 10:45. Let's call it. Thanks, you guys. I'm
Somebody make a
sorry.
motion to
I make a motion to close the meeting.
I'll second.
adjourn.
Adjourn
All
the meeting.
adjourn? Yep, you got it. Thanks, guys.
So we're back here.